Three, two, one, and we're in. Jesse, welcome to the studio.
Thanks so much for having me. Very excited.
I'm really glad you're here because we've got a lot to talk about. First of all, I know you love podcasts, but I also know that you lived a long time in China.
Yep.
You've got some businesses in China.
Yep.
And I know you're here in LA, but you're constantly going back. So I totally want to get into all of that.
No, it's very exciting. I just got back like 3 or 4 days ago at the time of this shooting, so I'm still a little bit jet lagged. My jet lag schedule is I go to bed at midnight and wake up at 6 like a normal person, and I feel very weirdly, I'm like, "This is way too healthy." Like, this is not my normal schedule.
I need to unhealthy this out
Exactly.
a little just to feel normal.
A little bit, yes.
So, I mean, I've got so much I want to get into with you, but let's just start off with where you're from.
Sure. So I'm originally from Boston. I grew up in the Boston area in the suburbs of Newton. If we have any actual like Boston people on there, they're like, that's not Boston. Newton, grew up in the suburbs. And as I later went to China for, 10 years or so, a lot of people are like, oh, do you have Chinese family? I didn't have any sort of Chinese family. I studied language in school and I studied comedy in school. And or rather studied. I was in improv troupe. I wrote for a satirical newspaper. I did like kind of comedy stuff all up through my middle school, high school, college. And I studied abroad to go to China when I was in my junior year of college, and I did these really intensive language programs. So every day we'd be studying 100 characters, and every day we'd have a test on 100 characters and just go through this very intensive Chinese training. But I found I really liked it. I liked living there, and so after graduating, I wound up moving to China, and I stayed there basically all the way through COVID.
That's amazing.
It was to say, how did you get to China? You've been there for such a long time.
So I have a bit of a different story. So I went to the University of Toronto for 4 years, and I studied like international politics and stuff like that. And I took a class on China in my second year, only because, not even because I was interested in the class, but only because it kind of fit with my schedule because I was a student athlete.
Oh, okay. So you have to. What did you play?
I played basketball for the University of Toronto. So yeah, because of my schedule and stuff like that, I had to take the second year course. It was called Introduction to Modern China, and I fell in love with it. And then after that, I took a few more classes, and then after that, I moved to China.
Yeah.
And then when I moved to China, I started doing journalism work, and then I would come back to that same class like 3-4 years
Excellent.
after graduating, and then talk about all the things I was getting to shoot because I worked with like New York Times,
Yep.
Wall Street Journal, et cetera, et cetera.
That's great.
Yeah.
It must be, yeah, it's definitely one of these things. I feel like the interesting thing about China is like there's no other place that's like that big, that well educated, that developed, and that cut off from and also from other people in as well. It's very hard to tell what's going on in China
Yeah,
from outside of China.
it
It
is.
just gets harder and harder every year. So
I remember though, like I moved to China in 2001, 2002.
yeah.
And I remember like Gmail working no problem,
Yeah.
Google working no problem. I remember Facebook and YouTube working no
There
problem.
was a time everybody. It's like I mean, we'll talk about this later if you want, but I wrote a book about my time studying Crosstalk with Master Deng about Chinese comedy. It's coming out in February, and I was writing this book. I'm like, it seems like a time capsule. I'm like, this was 2014.
Yeah.
It was and you were there. A previous version of that, where like I arrived in like the kind of the setup of that stuff. I remember coming the week that the New York Times was blocked was when I moved to China. But by that time, the writing was already kind of on the wall for like, being able to use the same apps and platforms as everybody else. But you got to live in a time when it wasn't like that.
Yeah, I mean,
Wasn't that long ago.
and it was exciting because, like when I first went to China and I traveled to China after graduating in 2001. And I kind of went there with an open book. Like, I'm just going to see if I like it. I did a 90-day trip in and out of Hong Kong. I did a full loop all around China, all the way up to the border with North Korea, all the way out to Kashgar,
Oh, that's great.
and then all the way down to Everest Base Camp, Lhasa,
That's a real loop. That's like the real loop.
and then I did the motorcycle trip. I did my motorcycle trip in 2010, where we did the exact same trip as but we did it on bikes, and we actually set a Guinness World Record.
Oh, that's
and that-
awesome.
And we made our first TV show, Tough Rides.
That's great. Well, I just came back. I did 6 days of dirt biking up in Vietnam last week.
How was it?
It was a lot of fun. Northern Vietnam is where the tea is. So like the same mountain path that goes from like Yunnan goes through northern Laos, Thailand, Vietnam, and it was beautiful. It was really amazing. It,
What kind of bike were you on?
it was a Yamaha 250 cc, like just the dirt bike type thing. It was
Perfect for that terrain.
yeah, it was like it was yeah, the slopes, man. This is my first time riding in any sort of like intense environment. Previous to that, I was either in Beijing, which is flat, or LA, which is flat, or there's some hills here, but it's like, it's very urban riding. But to be able to go up and down those things, I can't even imagine what it was like in Xinjiang. It must have been so amazing.
Well, it was dry in Xinjiang.
Yeah, it was dry there.
Yeah, because like when you're going downhill on a bike, you gotta
Yeah.
you can't hit the brakes, right? So you gotta ride the engine,
Yep.
the engine brake, like
Yeah.
and that and trusting that. But if you're doing that on a downhill and you got mud, that's really hard. So that happened
Yeah.
to us a few times in Brazil or even in India, like on the Rotang Pass up in the Himalayas, because
Crazy.
we were there during the monsoon. But going downhill in the mud on a motorcycle,
Yeah, we went up to some of the areas where we were like to the ancient trees, and it got to the point where me as like I just did not have the experience as a rider to be able to do it.
yeah,
And so we walked like, a portion of it, but it was still amazing to go up and, to be able to see. I like the bike, you see the whole of the country, you see the people, you see what's like, the roads. It's a less isolating way of doing that travel.
I always say it's like a 360-degree, like holistic way of traveling because like you feel every bump in the road,
Yeah.
you feel every temperature change in the weather,
Yeah.
you smell all the food they're cooking when you go through every village.
And it's like, you get off of the path a bit. I think like, the world has really shrunk in many ways. If you want to get from an airport to an airport, it's never been easier. You just need to have enough money. But if you want to get off of the path, I've kind of found like in China, you see this as well. The areas that are serviced by like tourist areas are overwhelmed. And then there are amazing areas that it's just like there's no other way to get there except for a long car ride or whatever, and almost no one goes. And so there's a lot of openness if you're willing to change your mode of transit onto the bike. You have a lot of places you can go. So I'd love to do more of them, but I'm kind of still recovering from it a little bit in the sense it was very hot out. It was nice in the mountains, but it was very hot down in the valleys. And so like the long bike rides and the heat and everything like that, it was like, oh, it was a lot. So
So
yeah.
back to Boston.
Anyway, back to Boston. So
So hold on. So
yeah.
you're back in Boston. So Boston's like the greatest sports town in the world, right? You got
Yes.
the Red Sox, you got the
Yes.
New England Patriots,
Yep.
you got the Boston Bruins,
Yep.
and you somehow get caught up in comedy and language.
Yes. So it was kind of like a thing. So I did improv all through high school. It's really like it started with improv. And improv, I'm sure everybody knows a little, no script, no props.
Mhm.
You go on stage, you just make stuff up with your team.
Sounds fucking amazing, doesn't it?
I mean, this is the thing that I loved about it. It was like it was so freeing. And for somebody like me that their mind is going fast, it was the first group of people that I ever like hung out with where I'm like, oh, your brain thinks the same way I do. Like we're making it up. Let's go. Let's go. Let's do it.
It's pure ADHD, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Like we did a thing. I think 11 of the 12 people in my high school improv troupe had ADHD, myself included.
Yeah.
So it was definitely one of these moments where, I gravitate towards these things where like you can get the whole of like, it's not just it's performance and it's art, but it's also a friend group, but it's also a lifestyle and almost a philosophy. Like, improv people say yes, yes, and
Mhm.
try to find a way to agree with other people and go with them and build with them as opposed to saying my idea is right.
Mhm.
And like that informs so much about how I've tried to live my whole life is like that improv mentality of like, yes, and
Mhm.
it also, on the flip side of it, is hard for me to say no, which is something as I get older, I realize I need to do a little bit more.
Yeah.
But I think the mentality for that was really good. And so when I went to China that first time, I started wondering like, what's the comedy like in China? Do they have improv in China?
Mhm.
And I found that they actually did have bilingual improv and a small Chinese improv scene that was just starting up and a small English improv scene. And it was super fun. And I saw people doing these jokes and I thought it was really fascinating from a cultural standpoint. Like, you know, there would be jokes that I just didn't get at all. And then there would be jokes that I got, but I was like, this same joke, the reason it works comedically will work across the cultures, but that joke itself is very Chinese
Mhm.
or is very Western. Like I remember there was a scene where we had an improv scene. There's a traveler in the desert and they run into Guanyin, Avalokiteshvara, like, Buddhist figure. And they ask all this advice, what should I do? And they get like horrible advice from the Buddha, basically. And I was like, this scene is very Chinese, but it comedically you could run the exact same scene with like Jesus on the cross, right? Like, right? It's like comedically, like every detail would change, every word would change, every joke would change. But as a comedian, I see why this works underneath the cover of that
The
culture.
beats are the same.
Yeah, like the beats are the same. The like something is funny about the idea of the appeal to authority and getting this bad advice, but then that where that puts all the characters of, well, you can't disrespect the Guanyin or whatever. You can't disrespect Jesus on the cross, but that doesn't sound like good advice.
Mm.
You know, like that character dynamic. And it made me fascinated about just comedy across cultures in general.
Did you ever get into the comedy scene in Boston? Because I was legendary.
Oh, so it was legendary, but I never did because this is the weird thing about my whole comedy journey and now being in LA is like I did all of my professional comic stuff in Asia. So like I'm really part of the Asian comedy scene, not the Asian American comedy scene, but like the Asian comedy scene.
So you would
And
do your comedy in Chinese.
yeah, so after that I discovered that there's not just the improv, but the big thing in China is there's a traditional form of Chinese comedy called crosstalk.
Did you ever meet Mark Roswell?
I do. So I had lunch with him last time I was back here. So Mark Roswell, that's what he studied. Da Shan.
Yeah.
He studied actually with my master, Ding Guangquan, and he was one of the first groups of people, and one of the other first groups of people studying Xiangsheng was a professor named David Moser, who was at Beijing Capital Normal University, and he recommended I knew him, and so he recommended I meet with Master Ding. And it all kind of came together in applying for and eventually winning the Fulbright fellowship. When I graduated college, I got a fellowship to go and research Chinese comedy by apprenticing to this comedy master. And so I spent my first year out of college as a comedy researcher, which means comedian, basically,
Mhm.
studying this traditional master student, joker, straight man kind of Chinese comedy. And, that eventually has led now to a, 15-year career of doing Chinese comedy. Most of my comedy's in Mandarin. Now that I'm back in the States, experimenting with doing some more in English, but like my main following as a comedian is still in Asia. That's why I'm doing Chinese language stand-up and crosstalk. Yeah.
Wow.
It's crazy.
So you fell in love with improv in high school in Boston, and you learned how to take risks and say yes and.
Yep.
That's beautiful. So then when you went to university, there's no improv classes to take in university, or did you
No,
find it?
I did improv all through university.
Which school did you go to?
I went to Brandeis,
Okay.
but it wasn't a class. It was like we had a troupe,
Right.
but we did long form and short form improv and musical. I actually think I did take an acting improv class somewhere. Was it in college? I think I actually did take a course in the theater department in improv, although it was much more effective to just learn by doing shows and
Yeah.
everything. But it was I think the comedy I knew in my soul I always wanted to be like a performer, or comedian, or actor, or creator, or something of the sort. The phrase has changed over the years.
How
But,
did that come about though? Like growing up in Boston, like were no one in the business?
like we didn't have anyone in the business. I was just like a funny guy. I like performing. Like I was like, if there was a talent show, I'm like, I'm gonna kill it. Like I can win this. Like let's go. I just really like performing and making people laugh. And I think that as I also find myself gravitating to these things that it's like, if you can, if you can really do it, you can do it. And that cuts out a lot of fakos.
Right.
Like it's like, if you can make people laugh, there will be jobs for you in comedy.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't make people laugh, like, it's just like you like, I would have no idea how to be a poet. Like, how is my poetry gonna be better than yours? How do I make it as a poet?
How do you judge yourself against
How do I
others?
judge myself? Yeah, not even so much myself against others, but like how do my work against my own work even? How do I improve myself other than a general idea I'm doing better, which is easy to delude yourself. And the thing I like about the comedy is you go up in front of the audience, if they laugh, they laugh. You can feel so many things from the audience, whether they're liking it, do they like the idea but not the punchline, or maybe they love the thing you're doing more than the jokes. Like, a lot of my comedy followers in America are people that are just like, they're either Chinese Americans or Chinese that are living in America, or they're Americans that are interested in Chinese culture. And they're like, finally a place to like hang out and do China stuff where it's not all gloom and doom and everything's talking about how the world's going to blow up. Like, can't we just have fun? And like, so my individual joke, some people might like one more than the other, but like, if you want to have fun and enjoy like play in the culture, and like, enjoy it, then that's one of the things that people come to. And so you can write jokes all day. And if you don't get that right, the jokes aren't going to work.
Right.
So I like the things like comedy, or even, spreading it to now kind of what I do more of is social media is like, if you can really do it, you'll see the results.
Right.
And if you can't, you have a lot of people who are very frustrated because oh, the internet sucks or whatever. It's like, no, you are not taking the data from the audience. You're not taking the feedback. It's like, as a comedian, I can't go on, bomb all my jokes, and then blame the audience.
Right.
And then but some people, for whatever reason, when an algorithm becomes involved, they're just, oh, it's the algorithm's fault. It's like, well, everybody else is like dealing with it. So there is a creative way forward. I really feel like there is a creative way forward for anything that anyone wants to do on the internet to be able to grow and build that community in a way that it's like never been before. And people get frustrated too easily, I think. So
So you're
yeah.
you're at Brandeis doing an improv troupe.
Yeah.
What are you studying?
I studied East Asian studies and what they called international and global studies, which is basically like international relations.
Yeah.
So I did like two majors. It was like a Asia themed one and then international relations, basically. So
And is that where the destination of China first got like fixed in your head?
I think I always knew I wanted to study abroad. I felt it'd be really cool to speak a second language and like use other people's money and like, that sort of stuff.
Jason Bourne style, just
Yeah,
have all the
there was
passports.
yeah, it felt like that'd be cool. Like, you have like, secrets. You can look down the street and analyze stuff and people don't know what you're seeing. And then when I went to China, I was like, oh, it's really like that. It was definitely one of these places because of how kind of opaque it is from outside. You go in and like you hang out in a bar and you talk to people and you're like better tied into the reality of what's going on in China than like the so-called experts.
That was one of the things I always found too. It's like after you spend a year or two in China, you know more than most university professors
Yeah,
in the United States who teach about China.
because just it changes so fast, and there's once you're out of China, and this is like is kind of a joke, but I guess it kind of fits here. The U.S. China relationship has really collapsed. Everything has gotten harder than it was on both sides. And I saw an invitation from like a think tank. They had a white paper competition, basically an essay contest. They're like, what is the biggest national security problem between US and China? And I wanted to reply and say the biggest national security problem is that you can't feed your family as a China expert without finding a national security problem. Because that's the only thing left that people are paying for.
Mhm.
They're paying for national security problems. And so if you want to count warships or you want to do that sort of stuff or talk about within the narrative in America about what China is, there's budget. And if you go and talk to people on the street, you instantly realize, wow, I'm more tied into reality. It's just not profitable to be tied into the reality in China unless it's in this same narrative of whatever's going on in the West that actually has budget for it.
That's a very good point. I think the biggest national security problem for the United States regarding China is that China's coming in and buying up massive amounts of farmland.
Farmland. Well, you got to grow food. So when I was in rural Yunnan on this last tea trip, I just spent like a week and a half there, and I was in this village where they do silver teapots. They take sheet silver and pound it into teapots over 10 days. It's crazy.
Mm.
And this village is beautiful, and they have a small village, and they have these like farmland outside of it. And I was like, this is beautiful. Like, but why is like, hey, can we get a piece of land and build a courtyard somewhere? And like, oh, definitely not. I'm like, why not? And they're like, the government is so worried that in the case of conflict, China will not be able to feed itself. They are not letting anybody take any more farmland and develop it for economic purposes, which is like crazy to be like subsistence farmers. Yes, that's our economic model, but they're so worried they won't have enough food if there's a problem. And again, my mindset is like, well, let's make sure everybody is on good terms with each other, and then we don't have to worry about that, right? But I'm maybe in the minority here of wanting to live together.
They definitely plan for the worst case scenario.
Yeah, and I think as a government, like there are times in which that makes sense, but I feel like the thing I dislike about this sort of thing is like regular people getting tied into that government to government thing. Like you saw with the trade war, people are like, China's been ripping us off. Like, define us.
Mm.
Who are you talking about here? Like your family? Like, has someone in China ripped you off? Like, what are we talking about here? It's like you might as well say, oh, the Yankees are playing unfair.
Mm.
Okay, well, like you don't play for the Red Sox. Maybe the Yankees are playing unfair, but like I don't know, write a letter to the commissioner or something, like, don't come to me and, like, start, like, causing problems on the internet and destabilizing everything on the internet. Like, go talk to the people who are actually in charge of the diplomacy.
The funny thing that hasn't really been explained in the whole tariff conversation that's been going on the last couple months here in the United States with the president and stuff like that, the thing that hasn't been explained to the average voter
Mm.
is that if the tariffs are higher,
Yeah,
the federal government
yeah,
generates more revenue.
yeah,
And if the federal government can generate more revenue from tariffs,
yeah.
then maybe you could see long-lasting tax cuts to the middle class, in which
Possible.
yeah, it's possible.
I think the question of the numbers, though, I will say, though, that, like, as the person doing the importing, it's very clear, like, for every dollar that gets collected in whatever trade that goes through the tariffs, like, $2 may never have happened. The pie shrinks
Mhm.
because it's like, yes, I will pay my tariffs if I'm required to, but I just also might just not do business at all.
So you're importing your tea from China
Yeah,
here?
we import everything. Like, the trade war was like existential level crisis for us because, so I run a tea company now as well. During COVID, I couldn't perform for a year and going on multiple years. And so I started making tea videos and sharing them on the internet. I had this experience of, in China in 2020 doing internet comedy. I have 400 million hits in China in 2020 and couldn't make any money. Like, 400 million is like, that's like a quarter of the country. At some point saw a joke of mine that year. Well,
More than the entire
yeah,
population of the United
yeah,
States?
but still can't make any money.
Yeah.
So, I was like, I guess I have to sell something. And so originally I was gonna try to sell tea in China, but then I started making these tea videos and posting them on the Western internet. And people had great questions. I realized, like, oh yeah, if you didn't speak Chinese, how would you learn about Chinese tea?
Mhm.
It would be very difficult. And so I started making English language comedy, content about that. And now it's like really grown. I have a warehouse in the US, warehouse in the EU. We're opening one in the UK and one in Canada in August.
Mhm.
And we buy all the tea from farmers. We pack it in China. We ship it to all these different countries, and then we have these warehouses. So if anyone places an order within 2 days, it's at their door or whatever it is.
Holy shit, you've
Yep.
built out like a whole
Good
business.
company. I got 9 employees. It's a thing. And it came out of nothing during COVID, which is like really unbelievable. The tea accounts have over 1 million followers now. It's like, as far as I can tell, the biggest online account for Chinese language tea culture in the
Mhm.
West.
Wow.
And I think part of it came also because I was a comedian, so I kind of knew about performing and doing internet stuff and like when I was starting. But
You're making tea entertaining.
yeah, yeah, and I think, like, tea, in the West, it's a little bit complicated. Like, tea, like, high quality tea is still very niche in the West. But then of the people that are doing it, a lot of them in my mind are over serious. It's like, today we will be drinking raw pu'er, an unknown mountain. And then it's like, if you don't have a pu'er knife, like, get off the channel. Like that. It can get really intense. And
Bit stuffy.
yeah, and I just kind of, like, it's funny, like, if you're in China, you go somebody's house, like, "Oh, sit, drink tea." Like, it's just part of life
Mm.
in a way that, I really enjoy. It's one of the reasons why I was a tea addict and, I was in position to start a tea company because I just loved hanging out at the tea market and talking to people. And, it's like one of these things as well, like with improv, there's a philosophy involved in it. It's like, it's this idea about doing something well. The Chinese tea methodology is like, get really good tea from the best place you can, make it simply and well using good equipment,
Mhm.
and then share time with a friend and have them over and talk about anything you want.
Sounds brilliant.
It's great. And it's like one of the reasons why I love being a tea guy is like, my life then becomes, it's almost like podcasting. It's like, hey, get to hang out with interesting people, meet interesting people. Um,
My podcast saved my life.
yeah, it's like, really, it feels like that though. It's like that connection. I'm sure you had a lot of trouble with it too, moving back from China after many, many years in Asia. You come back to America, like, who am I? What do I do here? Like, did you go through any of those problems or?
Well, for me, it was COVID. So,
Yeah.
so I moved, like, I was in China for 18 years, but then from China, I went to Dubai. And I went to Dubai only because I was traveling globally so much.
Mhm.
And I just couldn't get in and out of China efficiently enough to,
From the States.
no, from Shanghai, like,
Oh.
because I was, so I moved to China, and my first 10 years, I basically never left China. I just covered China
Yeah.
for various news publications like the New York Times, Wall Street
Mhm.
Journal, blah, 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 Time, Newsweek, Forbes. And then And then I started moving to television.
Mm.
And then so in 2010, I moved to TV. And then, so the first few TV shows I did were just all about China.
Mm.
But then I started realizing like there's not enough of a global audience just for Chinese stuff.
Yeah.
Because you make, like, people want to see 1 out of 10 episodes and have one of the episodes be in China.
Yeah.
They don't want to watch 10 episodes of China.
Yeah. Eventually, all the names just kind of blur to them, and they're just like, oh, it's a pretty region, but
Yeah.
the last one was also pretty.
Exactly. So so then I started making like 8 episodes, 5 continents, 8 different countries, and I started getting into that. So I was traveling, like getting out of Shanghai, for example, and getting to Brazil.
Where do you get the budget to do it? Did you self-fund it in the beginning, or would you get like a grant?
Yeah, I self-funded. So 2008, Lehman Brothers collapses. Uh, Creates a huge amount of destruction globally, but one of the niche things that it destroyed also was the print publishing industry.
Mm.
So all of a sudden, it accelerated something that was already happening. So all the ad sales and all the classified ads were already going off the newspaper. So that kind of accelerated it. So by 2009, 2010, I couldn't make a living as a photographer the way I had previously.
The model was blown up.
So then I just decided to try to make TV. So as a photographer who knew China really, really well, covering it for 10 years,
So that's where you should start.
right? So then I wrote to Nat Geo, Discovery Channel, all these big people, and I was like, okay, I'm going to do this show. You guys want to fund it? Blah blah blah. They were like, no, you have to go through one of our production companies that we trust. I went to all their production companies. They said no. I was like, fuck it. I have the exact idea of what I want to do.
You know what you want to make it.
Right. So then I just went out. Yeah, my brother and I would put together some money and we just went out and did it.
Oh,
And then
where did you get it? Where did like the first show? Where did you get it sold? Like, how did you get it on?
so the first show we made was Tough Ride to China. And my brother and I, we did a 60-day, like 18,000 kilometer, which is what, like
Wow.
13,000 miles, all our way around China. Like I said, we started at my home in Shanghai. We went up to the border with China and North Korea, went out to the border with China, Pakistan,
It's amazing.
rode all the way to Everest Base Camp,
It's great.
and then back to Shanghai. And we made that 6 episode series, 30 minutes each. And we gave it to a distribution company in Holland, and they ended up selling it into Travel Channel.
Nice.
And then Travel Channel took a whole bunch of our motorcycle shows that we did after that.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, I'm just like, I kind of learned earlier on in my performing career, and I keep forgetting it to my own detriment, but it's like good things happen when you make the thing. And then like nothing good happens if you don't make the thing. So you got to make the thing. I guess the question is, and it's one of the weird things about creating stuff is like for somebody who's not like even a later version of you that may not have been as interested in that project, it would have seemed like an enormous lift to do. And I'm sure it was a big lift to do in the moment, but I'm sure also you were like excited to go and do it and like, make the show.
Every day.
Every day you're like, oh, this is great.
Yeah.
And then you turn back and you look and say, well, that was actually a lot of work, but it didn't feel like a lot of work. Whereas like sometimes if you're not making the show you want to make, or you're making a show you don't want to make, it's just like, oh, how do you get out of bed? Like, it's just like, I have like no juice at all anymore to do projects I'm not like excited about.
Working for other people sucks.
Yeah, I have avoided it if you can. I mean, this is the thing is, so during the trade war conflict, when, I had built this tea company that was now supporting me and like 9 other people, and just seeing that it could all be destroyed immediately for no reason. Even in a world where you want to bring back American manufacturing, ancient tree Chinese tea and traditional Chinese porcelain is not something America will ever produce.
No.
So but eventually it came down to, I was like, what do I really like about the tea and the comedy and all this stuff is working for myself. And will I be forced to work for somebody else tomorrow if the whole thing falls apart? No, I'll figure out some transition. I'll make the tea channel a travel channel. I'll do tourism. I'll make videos. I'll try to do paid content. There's like a bunch of stuff I can do to still work for myself.
There's
Yeah.
paid positions to riot in downtown LA these
Oh yeah, you can. Yeah, somebody's getting paid. There's a lot of money going around. I've never seen so much money be spent on like a couple hundred people throwing rocks. But it's
crazy.
like there's money all over. I mean, I'm sitting out on my porch. I see like 3 helicopters a day, all like constantly going around. I'm like, how much do those cost? Like, we can clean up a lot of rocks for the for the price of the helicopters. But in any case, I think keeping that focus is very essential because as I don't know, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on it as well. But like as you get into a creative career and you have some choice on the stuff you want to do, finding that motivation to know which are the projects you do want to do and don't want to do, it's very useful to have that compass.
It
Able to
is.
say, like, you need the compass. And then the times where I'm most frustrated are not the times when, like, the things I'm doing I don't like as much. It's when I'm like, Why am I doing it? Where's the compass? Why is, I want to get to that point where I just work all the time on making the stuff and don't even feel it, you know?
And we're at a stage where you work like 20 hours a day, but you work for yourself and you don't even fucking care.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's great. So
As a tea guy, how do you like that tea?
oh, that's good. So this is hibiscus. So my tea culture is all like the tea leaf tea, Camellia sinensis. So for the herbal stuff, flower stuff, I actually don't know as much and don't drink as much,
Mhm.
but it's very refreshing.
Yeah.
And the hibiscus is one of those. We were thinking of doing some like hibiscus stuff, but I couldn't find any reason that the Chinese hibiscus was or wasn't better than any other hibiscus.
I got you. Yeah.
So the one of the reasons why it makes sense to do the tea and the way I'm doing is like if you have ancient tea trees from Yunnan, it really is different than if you get a tea bag in like the grocery store.
Yeah.
And even like a medium quality Chinese tea is going to be better than what you can get in the States. But when it comes to the herbals and the flower stuff, I have one, it's not really in the tea tradition as much in China,
Mhm.
but two, it's like it doesn't seem like where you grow it matters that much to the end brewed result.
No, you're right. Because I get these leaves out of Nevada.
Yeah, in
Mm.
Nevada,
Yeah.
it's tasty though.
Yeah.
It's good.
It's good. It has a lot of like medicinal values, and it's good antioxidant.
Yeah.
I like it.
I think the other good thing that the tea does for me is I drink way less soda.
Yeah.
That is like I'm like, I'd rather keep all my calories to like the food I wanna eat and, drinks and stuff like that, and then if I can cut out some empty calories, then I'm just totally happy to drink tea. I
Mm.
just do that.
Someone told me this once, and this person was quite fit. They told me they never want to drink their calories, because we all have a.
Yeah,
If you're counting calories every day, you just like you said, you want to eat the tasty things
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and not be drinking your calories away.
Yeah, exactly. So although it's hard, and I don't know why, I feel like I eat way more in China and I don't gain weight. And I feel like when I'm here, I don't eat horribly by an American standard, but but I find I just keep gaining weight. I don't know.
Everything here is bad for you, though.
It's crazy.
Everything in the grocery store is trying to poison you outside the vegetable area.
Yeah, it's like it's funny, like in Yunnan, one of the reasons I love it there so much is like they just like it's almost funny. It's like Yunnan reminds me almost of Italy in the sense that like if you went to Italy and you're like, hey, do you have like a frozen pizza? They'd be like, what are you like Antichrist? Like, like we care so much, they care so much about their next meal
Mm.
that they're like, why wouldn't you use good ingredients? Like get it fresh, what's in season. And in Yunnan, it's the same thing. You go in, they're like, what is this? They're like, oh, it's called blah, 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 and it only grows here
Mhm.
and we picked it up on that mountain over there. It's like it's all super, super local. There's lots of vegetables, there's lots of mushrooms, there's lots of fish. Like I never feel like I'm being like I didn't eat well and then look around and like find out that like the food was not good. It's always great. I love you.
I used to go up. I used to go up like into the Nujang Valley in 2000, like 2003, and we were up there, and there were all these villages, really high up in the mountains, right on the border with like Tibet and Myanmar, Burma, and of course they had like a huge conflict in Burma at that time. They still do, and we used to go up and we used to find these Catholic villages of semi-Tibetan Yunnanese
I've heard about this. They
Yeah.
have they have some Christian communities out there.
with full churches.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, and so what happened is the British came to China and colonized part of it, and they settled in a lot of the coastal areas because they had
Yeah.
a navy. So, but the French, they went in and they kind of colonized or started spreading religion in a lot of the hard to get places. So you'll find a lot of villages like around the Himalayas, around Burma, India, and all these places where you'll find like the French actually built Christian communities there.
That's great. Have you ever seen in Harper's Ferry, Virginia, the China Folk House? You know about this?
No.
There's this group of people that they had a house from one of these Tibetan villages that in Yunnan that was going to be flooded by a dam project. And they went to the guy who owned the house that was going to be destroyed and like, can we move the house to America? And they took it apart piece by piece and they got all the papers, which is a miracle,
Mhm.
and they shipped it and rebuilt the entire house in Harper's Ferry, Virginia. And it's like, it's one of these like it's like Tibetan architecture, but they have a cross up on the front of the house. It was a Christian family
Crazy.
that was living, but it was like Tibetan village, and then they were a third ethnic minority that wasn't Tibetan, or I guess Christian is not an ethnic group there, but like there's like all this very interesting cultural and religious and like architectural and food and all this sort of stuff that goes into these houses out there, and they succeeded at bringing one back. They use it for like summer camps and educational programs. It's a really cool thing. I went there and had tea with Dr. John Flower, the director there.
Amazing.
And it was just so great to have like tea outside of this Tibetan house in a courtyard in Virginia, the woods. It was crazy.
The crazy thing about those Catholic communities that we visited that were set up by the French is they still do mass. They were still doing mass when we were visiting. Yeah, so like for
Do
us
you
to
know about enough about Catholicism to know the difference between their mass and the basic Catholic mass?
yeah, it was a little bit different, and it was a little bit, and they had like a few little like Tibetan things mixed in there, so it was a bit of a hybrid.
Oh,
But it wasn't like the same kind of Catholic mass that you would get in Italy,
mhm.
but it
It
was
was very clearly like this is Catholic mass.
Bible and everything.
Wow,
Yeah,
great.
I don't know if it was a communist government issued Bible or not.
Who knows? But there's maybe a couple fewer quotes in there than there could be, but it's really cool. I mean, I think this is one of the things about China where like I think every time I come back, I get used to it again, but especially this week, having just come back, is getting back and seeing the very low level of discourse in America about China and just the oversimplification about all the issues and um, just the determination it seems from people here to not get into the what I feel is the most interesting and important parts about China. Just that I think it's a more like approachable subject to people if they know 8 to 10 things about it,
Mhm.
and then they just kind of never learn anymore.
It would be nice to see some prominent Chinese and American businessmen and women um, create a fund or something like that, where every year, like 10,000 Chinese kids in their 20s, come to the U.S. and 10,000 American
I
kids
would love
go.
to do that. I mean, my version, I wanna start like a Fulbright for video, video creators.
Oh,
I
smart.
wanna do like, what do? You skateboard? Go and hang out with the Chinese skateboarders.
Mhm.
Just make videos. That's all I want to do, and like just people to people exchanging life. Because this I think that it's the thing that's going to ruin us all when it comes to these big relationship things is like everybody getting into this nationalist pocket where now it's us versus them, as opposed to the reality, which is like every American that gets a chance to fly to China and have a guide that will help them translate, they come away loving the people.
Mhm.
The people all love each other. Like it's pretty rare to have people that go to one place and they come back and like I hated all of them. Like it's never as black and white once you actually go there and deal with real people. But in the world that we live in, where the internets have been sundered,
Mhm.
and they can't get on our internet, and our people have no interest in going onto their internet,
Mhm.
um, it creates like this conflict, and there's just not a lot of bridges around. And so, like, yeah, exactly. Just get as many of them over here and many of us over there as possible. Get everybody to know each other.
Mhm.
And if we can't solve the problems, then maybe they were unsolvable. But right now, it's like every time you get a chance to actually sit down and think about it at a deeper level, but actually talking with the people, you realize it's like there's like fighting going on up here that is completely irrelevant to our lives.
Yeah.
And the narratives that are being discussed in the general media about China are kind of more of a side effect of the American like for-profit media system. It's just like what's going to get clicks
Right.
because otherwise you can't report it. It's just like there's no money. It's expensive to go over there and report and support reporters. And it's hard to be a reporter in China now. That just hard to get the visas.
Very. Yeah.
So it's like,
I've been detained in every province in China,
every,
working with the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal.
so like here's the thing. Here's a question then. So like a lot of people will kind of say, oh, they like journalists get detained, and then they write off the entirety of like doing journalism in a country like that. What is it like for you to have to deal with that and then still want to be a storyteller in China? Because like it clearly has not diminished your interest in telling the stories.
No, so I mean, it was really strange. Like, so when I started doing it in like 2002, 2003, I was addicted to storytelling. So I loved photography and I loved writing and the whole spiel.
Yeah.
And then I got hooked in with a lot of these big news outlets, and then I started working with them.
Mhm.
And the access we had to amazing people, I got to meet like Jack Ma before Yahoo funded them,
Oh,
like
wow.
originally. And then you start getting in love with the storytelling, but then you start to realize how cat and mouse it is between the Chinese authorities who don't want you to report,
Yeah.
and how important some stories are to let the Western world know what's going on in China,
Yeah.
because there's so much cross investment and things like that. So you start to get very much caught up in like the public service of why it's important to tell these stories to American
Yeah.
viewers and investors and the English speaking world in general. And I think that that kind of is what motivates you, and the cat and mouse angle of how to deal with the Chinese authorities and how they put pressure on you.
Yeah.
Like there were times where we would go to a hotel and check in, and then we would get locked in our rooms and not be able to go out and report. And then the next day they would like escort us to the airport and be like, go back to Shanghai.
Right.
Y-
Crazy.
Crazy stuff. So that happened a lot, but I guess it was really just like this desire to tell the story at all costs. And then because it was never really like life threatening, it was all just very annoying.
Yeah. And I think that I think that like I felt this on my last trip back as well, because I came over right as the trade war was starting,
Mhm.
and I felt for really the first time in a long time with China that there was a real interest on the internet to try to figure out what's going on in China, because like it escalated so quickly,
Mhm.
and then people, I think a lot of people on the internet were like, is it really that bad there? What's going on there that is deserving of this sort of like, treatment? Oh yes, we're being cheated. But like what specifically? How?
Mhm.
Like, and I think when people start to do even a little bit of research, they find it's hard to find good stories coming out of China because of how hard it is to do the journalism.
Yeah.
And so
And how many fewer journalists there are now after COVID?
nobody, yeah, after COVID. And so like, and this weird balance of like one of the reasons like people are like, oh, sometimes a video, oh, Jesse, you should be the ambassador to China, which I'm like, thank you very much, but would never be able to do anything of meaning again.
Mhm.
The moment it's official, now all of a sudden you can't do it.
Mhm.
And so there's an element to being a video creator there and just like a tea guy. And I really do run a tea company. It's not like a front for anything. Um, that might allow me to kind of tell those stories in a way that, normally you couldn't, or as a comedian as well,
Mhm.
telling jokes about stuff that like normally might be more sensitive, and now you can kind of find a way through.
Mhm.
There's a lot of landmines to dodge nowadays.
So did you get out to China before you got the Fulbright scholarship to go out there
I studied abroad for 6 months while I was still in college
in China?
in China, in Beijing, doing those intensive language programs. And then the summer of 2011, which was going into my senior year, I had an internship with the Nature Conservancy in Beijing. And so I spent my time in Beijing and in Yunnan doing work for the Nature Conservancy, mostly in offices. Like it sounds really nice, but it was mostly like office research work.
Mhm.
But it did allow me to get to Yunnan for the first time, which was a big journey for me,
Life changing.
life changing.
Right.
And it was yeah, and then graduating in 2012, I went as a Fulbright scholar. I had 1 year on the fellowship, and then after that, they stopped sending me money, but I was like, I'm having a ton of fun doing this, and so I just decided to transition to making my living off of doing shows. Eventually opened a comedy club in Beijing for 6 years and ran a comedy club in the Gulo area.
Mhm.
Um,
So tell me how like so you're doing your Fulbright scholarship, you're
right.
working with this comedic master.
Yeah.
You're doing crosstalk,
Yeah.
which for people who don't know is when one guy is like a wise guy and one guy's a
Yeah.
straight guy.
So it's a joker and a straight man,
Yeah.
and it's all taught master to student. So generally, you'd be performing with your master or another disciple of the same master. And you can really talk about anything, but I think where Xiangsheng really shines is when it talks about kind of the traditional Chinese culture. Because you go on stage, everybody's wearing robes, you're in a tea house. It feels like a Chinese performing space,
Mhm.
and so it allows you to talk about the traditional culture in ways that, people may not have think about. So lantern riddles and, uh, you know, um, different types of uh, opera, like gets worked in there, Beijing opera, Shandong opera, different types of singing and like traditional performance all gets kind of worked into the comedy.
And lots of jokes about like
Yeah.
accents and different foods.
Accents, foods,
Yeah.
and then, but you can also just talk about like what's funny right now. Everyone's always trying to figure out what's funny right now.
Mhm.
And, you can improvise. Like there is a script, there's a skeleton, but once you know it and you have a partner you worked with many years, it's easier to improvise. You can talk to the audience. There's no fourth wall.
Mhm.
It's a lot of fun. And so I apprenticed to this man, Ding Wangquan, Master Ding, who is the only master that takes foreign disciples, and wound up studying with him for 7 years until he passed away.
Oh wow.
And it was a really amazing lens to be able to learn about China, and it felt very healthy to me to be learning about a culture in a way that you need to make them laugh.
Mhm.
Like sometimes I feel like people are more eager as we're talking about all the, negative story about this, negative stories about that. They have a lot of negative stories over here. But like when you have to go on stage and make people laugh, you can't just get away with like, well, I'm right and everything's horrible there. It's like that's not funny at all.
That's very American.
Yeah. And so I'm like, even if everything is horrible, well, you gotta make people laugh about it. Like, you have to like, wherever things are bad, there's a funny element to it, and whenever things are good, it's also kind of funny to say, like, well, I can't just go on stage and say everything is great either, because that's not entertaining, so you gotta kinda find the bad and the good and the bad, and it felt like a very healthy way about going about learning the culture to say, I can learn about the good and the bad and the ugly and the amazing, but it has to be done in a way that's gonna be entertaining and, like, um, that I can go on stage and try to, do some jokes.
So I mean, so for many people who don't understand, like a Fulbright scholarship, basically you make a proposal
Yeah.
to do a international topic
Yeah.
in a country of your
Yeah, so
choice.
Fulbright it's a program that's a collaboration between the US Department of State and then local other countries around the world, their Department of Education.
Mhm.
So, basically, American scholars go abroad to research, foreign scholars come to America to research, and then the goal it was developed after World War II, thinking that, "Hey, maybe if we knew each other a little bit better, we wouldn't be, like, fighting wars with each other all."
You think?
Yeah, and this is why it's very sad that the Fulbright program has been canceled going to China. It was canceled in Trump's first term, and all the lobbying, we did lots of lobbying, Biden didn't turn it back on. Like, they couldn't like, the bridges are being destroyed, and so that's the frustrating thing is, like, being able to go back and forth and do this culture and do this tea and do the comedy and being an effective like, trying to do good for the world through sharing the culture and the stories of what's going on in China and sharing what's actually going on in America in China, which is in many ways even harder
Because they don't get any
because
access.
they don't get any access. But here's the thing, they don't get any access, but they don't know it. In the 80s, people were like, "Oh, we feel like stuff is being hidden from us." Now, so much video footage of the West gets into China, but people are not aware the levels of like, filtering it goes through before it arrives at them. So
Totally controlled.
yeah, it's like I think controlled is a strong word, but like filtered is better. It's just like it's almost I think of it like Darwinian. There's certain things that cannot thrive in that soil. And so like a counter narrative to anything truly important cannot survive.
Mhm.
So when they know the narrative they want to be sharing, um, it's almost impossible. The opportunities are when the narrative is not clear
Mhm.
and it is also in timing. Like during the trade war, would be very difficult to get on stage as an American. Maybe this week after they've just done a trade deal, now maybe I can get back on stage. Like,
It's crazy.
and so it's like and that's one of the reasons why I'm still here in LA and trying to develop my life as a performer and a creator outside of China is that there is an element of this that's beyond my control. And it doesn't make me happy, but it also, I think, is not reason to say, like, when people are like, oh, like you can't do any good comedy in China because it's censored. It's like that's a very simplistic way of thinking about it. But there are realities that there are times when you can do some types of things and you can't do others, and vice versa.
I remember speaking to Dashan Mark,
Yeah.
and do you remember when that Huawei CEO's
Oh, yeah.
daughter,
Yeah, Canada had big problems with them because of that for
and Mark
years.
Mark didn't go to China for like 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, like and studying with Master Ding, like, Master Ding, my master did comedy with the coal miners' cultural work unit,
Mhm.
doing comedy in coal mines for 10 years during the Cultural Revolution, and it was one of these moments where it was like it was so great to have a master to be able to learn this from because he had an unbelievable amount of patience. Sometimes you just can't do the type of comedy you want for 10 years.
Mhm.
And if he had given up or tried to have this sort of like, "I'm gonna be a smart aleck. I'm gonna show them that the system is messed up," I never would have been able to study with him because he would have been pilloried
In
somehow.
jail.
Yeah, or even just, like, not succeeded.
Yeah.
Like, I think a lot of people think, "Oh, they're gonna get, like, thrown in jail," or you do a bad joke, you get thrown in jail. It's not that, it's just like
They get canceled.
you could get canceled, but, like, real canceled, not the American style of, like, people don't like what I'm saying, so they buy fewer tickets,
Mhm.
like, actually, like, blacklisted.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that there's, I think that it's a weird thing to say, but I think in the modern world, figuring out how to do comedy and culture and storytelling and all that, given the actual reality of these systems we live in, where we don't have perfect speech.
Mhm.
We don't have, even in America, like, good luck trying to get something you want to say out of the algorithmic bubble, which it will thrive in.
Mhm.
You basically have to buy ads if you want people to if you want to say something that's hard to hear. That's not what social's there for. Social's there to have us like love it or hate it,
Mhm.
and it's not there for like difficult, nuanced discussion.
Definitely not.
Yeah, and so it's like but that in my mind, that's the whole game now. It's like it's very easy to for people to say like, "Oh, you don't have freedom of speech because it's censored," or something like that. But like, okay, well, let's like, what are we gonna do? Write off 1.4 billion people and their happiness and just say there's no comedy in China because of this thing that you are thinking about, like in terms of the way the speech is done.
Mhm.
The whole game is figuring out how to actually still do it,
Right.
right? Like, and so, in that sense, I feel like although it's kind of less satisfying day to day to not be able to do exactly the project you want, I also think that it's more impactful because the project that actually lives and gets out has a chance of surviving and thriving in that soil,
Mhm.
as opposed to like planting a tree in soil it was never going to live in and then being surprised when it dies.
That's a nice
You know?
analogy. Yeah.
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 So I think that the internet presents a lot of new opportunities to us because of that. Even like you're even, as you've seen like 20 years before, you wouldn't have been able to just go and make the show.
No, never.
Can you imagine if you had to bring film with you
Yeah.
on that trip and the big cameras and we have like 80 minutes of film on this trip.
We were
Would
we
you
were
imagine?
we were lucky because like by 2008, 9, 10, like digital video cameras were just good enough at a smaller size for us to be able to do some of that stuff. We were super lucky on timing. If we were like 3 or 4 years early,
Yeah,
it would have been a nightmare.
yeah,
Yeah.
and so I think that this is, like, the cool thing I really like about the internet and about smartphones and why I actually, like, I wouldn't say purposefully, but pretty purposefully, like, don't try to overdo the video production element of things
Mhm.
is because the thing that's missing is the story and the attitude, and if I wind up not being able to tell the story I want because I have to schlep around 8 different tripods and lights and all that sort of stuff, I'm actually doing a worse job for my audience than if it looked really pretty,
Mhm.
but we weren't able to do the right type of thing because it would made the budget 5 times bigger and blah, blah, blah.
So walk me through this. Like
Yeah.
you're a Fulbright scholar, you're
Yeah.
getting paid to study in China with
Yeah.
with a crosstalk master.
Yeah.
Your Fulbright scholarship ends
Yeah.
naturally after a year. What was the decision to stay on? Like how big a moment was that where you're like, "Fuck, am I going back to Boston?"
Yeah, well, it was looking down the barrel of what do I wanna do next and realizing that I'm doing what I want to do. I just don't know how I'm gonna make money off of it. But there wasn't anything where like, God, I wish I were working at that marketing company or God, I wish I was like back home in Boston and starting like a new career there. It was like, no, I wanna be in China. I like doing this comedy. I felt like I was, even now as like a what I call now, it's kind of like cultural communicator or culture intercultural creator.
Mhm.
I knew even then there's something I like about being between the places.
You're a bridge,
I'm a bridge, and I like being a bridge, and I like taking people across the bridge, and I'd rather live on the bridges than have the bridges be destroyed.
which is
Um,
kind of currently happening.
oh, it's proactively happening. That's the thing. It's one bridges need maintenance, but it's one thing to not maintain. It's another to proactively destroy, and that's the thing that's been so frustrating about like, seeing the world that we lived in not that long ago and seeing how easily it can be like, if you had told me 10 years ago, like, "Oh, yeah, globalization can reverse," I would be like, "I don't think so. I think it's too far on."
You're right,
And
and
now it's like, I actually my personal take is I don't think globalization has reversed. I think the narrative has shifted, but if you want like, this is part of what I do with my channel. It's like, "Hey, if you wanna go to China, you can still go. Just go."
Mhm.
It's exactly the same way. It's actually easier now because they have all these trains and everything. Like,
all the
no
high-speed trains are amazing.
nothing is stopping you
Mhm.
from going and doing that stuff unless you're going to, like, North Korea or, like, Iran or something like that.
Mhm.
But, like, it's still all out there to be done. It's just very unfashionable right now in a narrative sense of the word to, say that, like, yeah, the world is global, we're all connected.
Mhm.
It's much more fashionable to be able to say, "Oh, these people are cheating us, those people are not cheating us. These are the good guys, those are the bad guys." and everybody's on a team.
Well, and the thing is, like, the governments are just the ones doing the cheating. The people are actually lovely. Like, so just as a total aside, and what's happened in the last 24 hours for
Yeah.
those of you, like, Israel just started bombing Iran,
Yeah.
just like overnight.
Yeah.
And we're in June 2025, and I'd been to Iran 3 times, and I loved it, and the people were amazing.
Yeah.
But then once you get to the government level, everything changes, and then that's where all the problems start.
Yeah, and I think that it's like, I told people, I had a joke about this, but I was like, I called it the beers every night strategy,
Uh-huh.
where I was like, there's probably only 400 people between the US and China that have any true power to be able to start like a war or a true global conflict. And if we just pay for them to be drinking beer together every night, and that's the only thing they do, we just get through one more day as an insurance policy, it would be the best insurance policy you could possibly buy, because the amount of damage that we create through conflict and war is so great, and just not being in conflict is unbelievably valuable. And you see it anywhere that the war starts, and then everybody gets used to the new reality of living in a worse world,
Mhm.
and they kind of post facto explain it to themselves.
Mhm.
But I'm like, the whole trade conflict with, like, regardless of the deal that comes in with the whatever the next trade deal is with China, it's like, in my mind, we need to be in a better place in 2017 before we started the first trade war.
Sure.
For this to be a true success, we should be more prosperous than we were then.
Mhm.
And with China, it's definitely not the case.
No.
And so, and on both sides, it's like, for them to really think that they played it well, they should come out more prosperous than they were
Mhm.
in 2017, and it's not happening. So it's like the damage that we create by conflict is so great, and the number of people that cause it are so small. It seems like a no-brainer to me that, like, the focus should be put on the people, on the places, whoever's, like, really in the place and is tied into the reality, of the moment, those people should get the microphone. And, like, if we can do that, generally speaking, I expect that people will find a way to live with each other,
It,
you
it
know?
doesn't seem like it's that difficult.
It doesn't, but it gets immensely difficult because it's convenient politically in many different systems. I mean, in China, there's a lot of stuff that happens because it's
Mhm.
politically convenient,
Mhm.
whether or not it's based on reality. And in America, we're seeing is the same way. Increasingly, I feel like the politics have just gotten so crazy that, like, maintaining the narrative of your group of people and why you're doing what you're doing is so valuable to the political system
Mhm.
that it's overwhelming the reality, which is like all of this stuff that we make, all of the things that we make with our hands and that we eat and that we use. These are all made by an incredibly complicated global system of everybody working hard.
Sure.
And, you can call that capitalism or communism, any ism. I'm kind of at the point where it's like, is your ism helping the world get better?
Mhm.
If it is, great. I don't mind if you call it that ism. But I'm kind of in a practical sense, like, I don't care if you want to call it capitalism or communism or socialism or whatever. Is it helping me drink more tea and have more fun? Is it helping me do comedy shows? Is it helping us live better together?
Mhm.
If so, great. Call it whatever you want. I just don't like the ism.
It's funny, like, even living in communist China for
Yeah.
18 years, like, most people didn't really understand that in Shanghai, you felt even more free than you do in Los Angeles.
I mean, it's like there's types of freedoms in Shanghai of, like, walking down the street and, seeing no homeless people and knowing that you're not gonna be attacked, and, like, not knowing. I never thought in all my years of living in Beijing or Shanghai, I never heard anyone say, "I won't go to that neighborhood," or "I don't wanna park there." Whereas in LA, you hear this all the time. I will say, though, that as somebody who lives in downtown LA, a lot of this is very overblown.
Mhm.
Like, I hear a lot of people bash downtown LA. I'm like, "Have you been there?" And like, "No, I never go there." Well, you're working off of second or third hand ideas. That being said, there's definitely more of those problems. Um,
Downtown LA is
yeah,
getting the same rap China is. It's all second and third hand
it's
information.
funny. Yeah, no, it seriously is, and the disconcerting thing is about, I think I think it's one thing with China because it literally is hard. It's like, as you're a journalist there, it's not easy to get good information about China. It means a lot of train rides and learning second languages and getting people to be comfortable with you. Anybody who truly wants to figure out what's going on in downtown LA can go whenever they want.
Mhm.
And so I feel like the reporting being bad on the things happening within our own country is much less excusable than with China. Like the fact that we're just like the sensationalization of a lot of the stories and this kind of like constant 24/7 push. For it's if you run a for-profit media, you got to get clicks.
It's true. Yeah.
It's one of the big reasons I started the tea company was that I knew that like the trap of making stuff as a creator, in my opinion, like a big trap is this idea of I just have to get as many hits as possible. Because then you throw everything else out. The reason you started doing it, your own moral compass on what is good work and what is bad work, what is responsible thing to do and what is not. When you need to maximize hits, you don't have the luxury of doing that.
It's true. Man.
And so when I started the tea company, my thinking was I want to make good video about tea, but more beyond that, if I have good videos on tea, a portion of people will buy it. Those people buying stuff to me from the tea shop is a much more effective way of making money than getting hits. Obviously, you need a certain amount of hits to get the people in, but like I don't need to feel like I need to like do anything like coffee sucks, why tea is better. Like, like you can drink coffee, go ahead.
Top 10 reasons to drink tea.
Yeah, you don't need to be super clickbaity or in my situation, like, heavily political, just to grab eyeballs. I don't need to do this. I can talk about the world and about politics as it actually comes up in my life or as it relates to tea, but I don't need to be a gadfly. And I think that if more creators had that out, whether it's through selling stuff or whether it's through a Patreon or whatever, like I kind of joke, I was like, the Nobel Peace Prize should be given to whoever can figure out a way to make the internet work without ads.
Right.
All of the sickness of all of the clicking all comes down to the fact that ads are the main way of making money on the internet because you need eyeballs and attention.
Absolutely.
When you do that, the depth of the piece, the value of the piece, the purpose of the piece, it all gets diluted at the best and destroyed at the worst.
100%. Yeah, no, it's been a tight rope of mine that I've been walking on for like decades because I rely on third parties and fundraising and stuff like that to get my shows off the ground.
Yeah.
And it's hard to take money from people and then tell them that they have no control over what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's almost to the point now where like the well has been polluted to some this extent by the nature of advertising and also media being used as manipulation. Like I did all this work of starting a tea company and all this stuff so that I could have independent speech to be able to talk about what I want. And yet still people on the internet will say, oh, he's nice to China. He's bought.
Yeah.
And I'm like, believe me, if I wanted to get bought, I have the WeChats in my thing. I know exactly who runs the CCTV and all these sort of things. I don't work with them. And it's not inherently because they're communist state media. It's like, what they recently, like one of the state media places in China, they're like, we want to do a comedy show, daily style show type thing where we talk about like, various topics. Would you be interested in hosting that? I said, I would if we have a true writer staff. It's a real writer staff. They're responsible to me. I'm in charge of the cut. You can cut anything that I put on there if you don't want to air it, but I get paid for every episode. You're not involved with the actual coming up of the topics or anything like that. And if you do this, even if your name is China Central Television, I can be clear as an artist that that's going to be a piece where I'm going to be confident in putting it up, regardless of the channel.
And you can put all your outtakes on YouTube.
And of course I said no, but like this is the way I think to treat them is like I'm not going to label you before you come to me and say you are or aren't good people on the internet. This structurally is what you would need to do if you wanted to have that show be run with responsibly. Yeah. And I would give the exact same list to Netflix. If Netflix is like, we want to do it the other way. But then they come to me and say, hey, like, why don't you do like a Tiananmen episode? Like, no, what are you talking about? Like, this is not funny.
It's ancient history.
It's ancient history. And it's like, there would be like, I couldn't imagine like if I were like an American, I go to Europe and do comedy and go on an interview show and they're like, what about the Japanese internment camps? Let's only talk about that.
Oh.
It's like, we have like one or two things we know about America that are horrible. And let's only talk about that, even though you're coming on as a comedian. But people will unironically kind of hold that standard to me as a comedian talking about China. So like, if you don't do comedy exactly the way we would in America for American audience in China to Chinese audience, you're a fraud. I'm like, what are you talking about? This is like crazy, crazy land.
What made you want to open up a comedy club?
So originally, this was 2017, which was not, 2014 or 15.
It all mushes together for me too. Yeah.
Anyway, at that time, stand-up in China was just starting to take off. When I got to China in 2011 and started doing the stand-up, um, there were, I bet, 8 people in the whole country that knew what stand-up was, and none of the audience knew, and so it was like it was kind of a mess. And then within a couple years, there started to be some TV shows that are like stand-up related that went on TV, and people really want to watch it, but there was nowhere to watch it.
Right.
And so we were doing like renting like bars, but they wouldn't shut off the music for us. And like we would there wasn't a place to go do stand-up and Western style comedy in Chinese.
So I used to do
Yeah.
talks at the Beijing Bookworm all
The
the time,
Bookworm was great. That place was amazing, but it was,
and they had a comedy night.
yeah, and so but it's only one. Like, there's only one place like that, and there were not enough of those places,
Mhm.
and so I thought to myself, I was like, "I really wanna have a theater. I wanna have control over this where we do things that are for the comedy and that it's for this intercultural comedy." Because I also every time I go into, any sort of space in China comedically, they're not looking for an American comedian to come in and do anything. They're hopefully are not, like, anti me joining in, but the system was not created for people like me. The system was not created for people that want to play between the cultures. It's built to reach the 7, 800, 900 million like rural second, third, fourth tier Chinese moviegoers, TV watchers. Even to do a show that was like modern Beijing or modern Shanghai, that stuff is rarely made.
Right.
It's because it's just not accessible enough to the rest of China.
So as someone who knows China myself,
Yeah.
like setting up a comedy club in an in a part of the world where you don't exactly have free speech and a lot of things are very sensitive. And like you said, like being an American during a trade war with America,
Yeah.
having American
Started
comedians,
it before the trade war, but like it was a problem, and it was, and I think it was one thing that we did have to consider.
it's an ambitious project.
Yeah, and COVID killed the club,
Hmm.
but kind of, would I don't know if it would have really been possible to run things the way we were before anyway after COVID. But it wasn't as big of a deal as I think people thought. I was always far more worried that our neighbors would sound like noise report us to closing before we get shut down for political reasons.
Okay.
And also, like, I had, during my time in China, I was invited to, drink tea several times with the authorities. When they found out I actually enjoyed drinking tea,
Oh.
they actually would take me to tea houses. And so occasionally over the years, I like the people of the Public Security Bureau, they knew me. When they call me up, like show up and have a talk. There was never any like pressure or stuff put on. It was more like we see you, you see us sort of thing.
Mhm.
But they were like very forceful about it. They're like, if you ever have any problems, call us.
Mhm.
Like, we'd rather know than not know. And so, that was always the back pocket ace was I was like, if I got shut down or anything, I'd be like, no, 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 I know my people.
Mhm.
They're in charge of me. We talk 4 or 5 times. Hey, there's a misunderstanding here. Like, oh, blah, blah, blah.
That's pretty progressive.
So like, but I think it's like, it's practical. Like, I didn't like it. But on the other hand, I also feel like they're like, part of the game of respect is respecting the parts of a culture, even the ones you don't like. I don't like the way that they manage a lot of the speech and internet there,
Sure.
but it is their country.
Mhm.
They fundamentally have a right to do it in a way that we fundamentally have the right to do the same thing. The thing that pisses me off is if they want to apply their rules to my art here,
Mhm.
which is recently starting to happen. But the idea that like, hey, if I run a comedy club in your country and these are the laws, I need to be aware of that. That being said, I'm like really here to make people laugh. I'm not here to cause problems.
Mhm.
And so I think that in America, where comedy is so political, people have trouble imagining a world where you could enjoy a night out and not think about politics,
Especially coming
Yeah.
from the United States.
especially coming from the US. So like the idea, like they're like, well, if you can't be political about comedy, what's left? I'm like, the entirety of human emotion. Like, you think people, like, aren't laughing in every other country where they don't, like, do every bit about the president or whatever? It's like, there's a depth to humanity that goes beyond politics.
That the
Yeah.
American life is totally missing.
And I think one of the reasons why everything is so tense is that it's because, the the politics of it, and there's just so much, it's a big game.
Mhm.
Like, ultimately, it doesn't matter to a lot of wealthy, powerful people whether you do tea as your hobby or bowling. But, like, it can matter to them what your political leanings are and how you decide to vote and whether or not you will or not support different policies.
Can you imagine a protest of illegal American immigrants in Shanghai running down the street, breaking windows with an American flag out, how long do you think that would fucking last in Shanghai?
It wouldn't last long in Shanghai, but I tell you, the people have brought this up, especially in reference to the recent protests here in LA. And I'm like, the thing that's being missed is that there are no Americans to revolt in China
Right.
because it's not an open immigration country. Like, there are types of problems you have when you're doing certain things right. And I think being over many places around the world, one of the interesting things about America is we're able to take there's no other place that's this big and this diverse in the world. What other country of this sort of population has so many different types of people living in it?
Sure, yeah.
It's a completely novel problem that no other country has. Like Hong Kong, Singapore, there are some cities that have that level of diversity. And so in my mind, like, to think that you can have so many types of people living together, different incomes, different educations, different languages, different cultures, there's going to be some problems.
Mhm.
It's not a failure of the system in my mind that there are problems. The fact we have problems means we're fundamentally further along than everywhere else, where in order to keep things simple, they just don't let different looking people in. And I don't think that that's a argument towards, like, keeping all the culture the same and all the people the same. I think it's an argument against it. I think, like, those societies socially are fundamentally not strong enough to be able to absorb this crisis that we're in.
Mhm.
Whereas, even though there's a lot of crisis going on, again, I even live in downtown LA. Like, life is totally normal
Mhm.
down there right now. But I think we're in a narrative struggle where I think people really feel there's massive threats coming in from either whatever whatever the thing is. It's like, everybody's got a different thing they're worried about now.
I get
You
text
know?
messages every day.
Yeah.
Are you okay? Are you okay?
Yeah,
Oh,
and like,
bullshit.
yeah. And I think it's like, I think it's just the heat has been turned up so high.
Mhm.
And one of the reasons I like the people-to-people stuff is a way of just turning down the heat. If I remember somebody left a comment on one of my tea videos where it had nothing to do with Chinese politics at all. It was just a Chinese tea video. But somebody left a comment. They're like, "What would you say if I told you the Chinese Communist Party is blah blah blah?" And just went on this rant. And I was like, "Well, I guess I'd say it sounds like you're trying to start a fight in the tea room." And the guy, to his credit, was like, "You know what? Fair. Like, that came out of nowhere."
No fighting in the tea room.
Yeah, but I'm like, "What are we doing fighting in the tea room?" And this is one of the reasons why I like the tea stuff is, like, you do look like an idiot if you bring your shit to the tea room. Like, and it's we need more spaces like this where, like, whether it's tea, I mean, it kinda used to be comedy, but personally, I feel like comedy is, like, at least online, the comment section is so nasty in a lot of comedy that it's like, I'm not sure comedy is doing this purpose in the same way when we all had to sit in the same room.
We're missing Bourdain.
Missing Bourdain, well, we miss Bourdain a lot.
The food, the drink, sit down
I
with
love
someone that you don't agree with and
Yeah.
break bread
Or
and
yeah.
work it out.
Just like right, yeah, and like, just like, it's one thing to. I think that the personal experience is so important because once you abandon the idea you need to have actually know the people you're talking about or have at least tried to make that connection, well, now you can talk about anything you want, about anything, anywhere, all the time, and it becomes. It's more like, as I said, it's like Yankees Red Sox is like a sports thing. It's like everybody's like, I'm on this team, they're on that team, I want to win. And life is not like that. Life is not a game where there's an enemy and you win.
Mhm.
Like, and in order to create the reality where there's an enemy and a win, that's what war is. So, like, in order to really have that narrative make sense, we need to be fighting.
Mhm.
And if we're not fighting, the narrative doesn't make sense. And so that's why I'm like, maybe there's a way of flipping this around to say if the narrative is more tied together about people to people, then it will cause less conflict in general. Like, anybody who has a chance to, like, go to China, as you said, you come back, you'll still have opinions, but the opinions will be rooted in some sort of basic human connection.
Which is what we're
Yeah.
missing.
Which is what we're missing. And I think that the internet, as much as I love the internet and love you guys for watching, hey, um, I think that this cycle between the online and offline has to be closed more. The internet is unbelievable, and I'm so glad it exists, and I spend most of my day on the internet. But it is not everything. And I think there's a lot of stuff that we're forgetting about how, as human beings, we managed to live together for so long. that we're forgetting because it's just so easy and profitable to make everything digital and not do anything in person anymore.
Right? This is the truth.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, I would love to have an in-person tea house. The rent in LA is crazy, and I make my income from e-commerce.
Mhm.
There's really no reason to do it unless you want to do it. And I think that's a dangerous place for us to be as a society, to say the only reason anything exists offline is just because people want to do it. But financially, it better be online, you know?
You should do some pop-ups. You should do like
Yeah.
you should rent like a place on a Saturday and put up a sign and have
We should do more of that.
Yeah.
I think we can. And that's a good way to do it. And I think that I think there's a lot of path forward if you have the internet following, and so that's why I really, I really like, working on the internet, whether it's for the comedy, whether it's for the tea. I just think that, it feels inclusive. You can follow from anywhere in the world. Um, and yet, the areas in my life I feel least rooted are like, where should I physically be? Because I have friends everywhere now, being around the world. How do you deal with this question about where you're going to physically be for your 12 months of the year?
Yeah, I don't care at all.
You don't care at all. So you've reached nirvana in the sense it's like, I'm good here, I'm good there, I'm good on the road, I'm good at home.
Yeah, because you got to think like so I started making TV in 2010. So and before that I was a journalist. So when I was a journalist, I was probably on the road. Yeah, but it was all in China, so it was like 2-3 hours max. Like we weren't going out to Xinjiang every day. It's mostly like, going out to Hubei or Hunan or Anhui, stuff like that. So I was probably on the road like maybe 2-3 days a week for the first 10 years I was in China. But then when I started making TV, it got crazy. So
Yeah.
like 2015 to 2020, I was probably 250, 275 days a year on the road
Wow.
because we were making 8 or 10 episodes a year. We were shooting 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. Like it was pretty intense.
Was it exhausting as you were doing it, or
Best thing
enjoyed it?
I could
Loved
still be doing it. I could do that till the day I die.
it? Yeah.
Like David Attenborough style, just like
Yeah.
fucking rope me up at 95 and let me keep going.
I really respect it. He's like, he's still going. He's like,
Still
what do I
going.
want to do? And this is one of the things that I feel like I've kind of struggled with in LA is like, I think a lot of people's idea in LA of like success is you get a big house and sit next to the pool. I don't want to do it.
Never.
It just doesn't seem like the right way to do it. I wouldn't mind having a big house and a pool, but the goal is not to sit there all the time, you know? So, yeah, I think I'm trying to deal with this reality now that COVID is over and that everything is open. And because of the tea company, and I still have my comedy following in China as well. I really could be there as much as I want or here as much as I want. There's really more to do there. But I also feel like I learned a lesson about having too many eggs in that basket during COVID.
Right. Yeah.
When I was like, I came back here after 10 years of living in China and had nothing in America, no idea about what I would do with my time, living in my parents' house while I was trying to get a visa back in, which never happened. It was not very comfortable.
Yeah, so I mean, I think this podcast studio actually is the first thing I've ever had in my life which made me feel like I had roots in one specific place. Because I think before then it was always very easy just to be nomadic.
Yeah.
So this has given me some roots, because I've only lived in LA for 18 months. I only been here since late 2023. So it's been good, but I still prefer the road. I still like meeting people. I feel like it gives me an energy to explore, ask questions. It educates me on a daily basis the way sitting in LA doesn't. So
Did you go on dates while you were like on the road? How did you do this back when you were single?
so I moved to China when I was single, but I was married for a decade to a Chinese woman.
Oh wow, I didn't know.
Yeah, and it was amazing. Like we had a really good relationship for a while. Everything ends eventually as it does, but it was really good for a long time. So we got married in China. That worked out really well. Then that kind of didn't work out. That's around the same time I moved to Dubai as well. But it was great living in China with a Chinese wife, because it opened you in a way to her family, her
You're
friends.
like really in the society.
Yeah, it was much more rewarding living there I don't think I could have lived there for 18 years if I didn't have that strong connection
That
there.
makes sense. But yeah, I'm just worried if my soul wants to be more nomadic, but also my brain is like, oh, like, how are you gonna date if you don't know where you're gonna be 2 months from now? Like,
Yeah, I don't know how that works there.
how that works either. So I
But
have to figure it out.
but traveling around is amazing as long as you're going deep into places. So like I always found like I always felt very shallow and very much like I was wasting time when I was like 2 days here, 3 days there, blah blah blah. But when you go for like 2-3 weeks to one country and really lock in, you leave there feeling so much growth, and it's such a rewarding experience that you can't wait till you go home, tell people about it, and then go to the next one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think I think that really it speaks to me. I mean, I think that there's a learning about yourself that you
Mhm.
do when you're in another place. And I think that one of the reasons I don't like to be stagnant is I don't, it's a weird thing to say. I don't want to learn everything about myself
Mhm.
in the sense that, like, oh, now it's done. Now I just sit here. I figured it out. Like, you want it to be dynamic.
Yeah.
And I feel like I enjoy life more when it's dynamic and it feels, you know, I feel more fulfilled in that way. And yet at the same time, I'm kind of thinking now, like, there are things that are difficult to accomplish, just like technically if you're on the road all the time, like
That's true, yeah.
especially with social media, because one of the differences between, say, doing TV and social is that social I'm posting every day. I need people to be up on it's almost weird when you think about it. I'm basically doing a live performance art piece about running a tea company and being a comedian, in additional to running a tea company and being a comedian.
Mhm.
Because you could run the company and do all the shows, and if you never posted any of it, nothing would get out.
Right.
So there's kind of like the job and then the meta job on top of it. And the meta job takes coordination and posting almost every day. And it's not the sort of thing where you can go shoot 10 days of footage, put it all on a drive, and then get back and okay, now let's organize and edit the footage.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, this is one of the big problems I have is I wanna do more long form stuff, but it's just like all of the incentives of the internet are against spending more time on the work,
Yeah, I
you
think
know?
that's but that that's where you need collaborators. So like what I used to do is so for example 2019, like that was peak me for work wise. So I made 10 episodes in 10 countries in 10 months. So we did 10 expeditions, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. So I have great editors I work with that I've worked with since 2010. Like I worked with my whole team
That's
for
so
yeah,
nice to have, like, your own team and they know how you do things. It's like
exactly.
that's like you just gotta build that.
And it takes so long to build, and actually we've all kind of gone our separate ways since COVID, and now that things are coming back online, it's hard not to have those pieces in place again, and I've kind of got to rebuild them. But just going back to this point, like, so what I would do is I would go out and shoot for 2 weeks, put it all on a hard drive, make a bunch of
Yeah.
notes, send it to my editor, let him work on it like for a couple weeks and see what he can kind of come up with, like versus where my vision is. And of course, we were always on the same page. But then during those 2 weeks off, I would go do a talk at the London School of Economics. I would go do a talk at Columbia. I would come out here to UCLA or USC. I'd be in Singapore. So in between those things, I was doing talks about my adventures or
Yeah.
about, so that's what the sponsors loved.
Yeah.
So like when you go to a BMW or when you go to like a watch partner or whatever, they love to see you out connecting with
You're doing the work.
doing the work. So for me, it was really important to like be making the shows, having my editor there, doing the talks, meeting customers, meeting the public, and then going back out into the
Maybe
field.
I should look like a real like, maybe that's the problem is, like, for the long footage, I should be trying to find a real sponsor.
I think so, yeah.
Like, make this travel I've always wanted to make, like, travel shows about tea in China,
Mhm.
and somehow, the holy grail for me would be also combining the comedy because I feel these 2 elements, they balance me internally. I love being able to go to a city and hang out with young people and see what's funny right now, and then I also love getting away from it and being in the countryside and having the tea and just talking about life in general.
That's a show.
And I think so. There's
Yeah.
some show there to be done about, like, whether it's province by province. I think I'd find the same problem you had, which is that all the provinces eventually sound the same to the non-Chinese audience. But, like, even just like, I also have tried to think there's some interesting element of the fact that I know these tea farmers in China, but their tea is being sent out to thousands of customers, whereas now, like, you know, the sitting with the customers is kind of a thing about the same as sitting with the farmers. Like, maybe there's some sort of way of having a show where I go to Ohio in addition to going to Yunnan or whatever, and it's, like, talking about the same things with the people. Anyway, we don't need to brainstorm on camera.
Okay.
But, like, I think that, that may be a solution. I'm kind of like it's funny because I did media in China, which is not the sort of general Western Hollywood or, like, even television. Like, the all the systems are so thoroughly different.
Mhm.
And then the only thing I've done in the States has really been social and live shows.
Mhm.
And so I've never really even explored, you know, trying to get a sponsor for like a straight up TV show or something like that.
Yeah, it can be pretty challenging. I mean, it's interesting. Like you either need to find a partner. There's two kind of partners, right? There's the partner where the product is in the show. So like
Yeah.
if I want to get like a Ducati or a BMW, that's great. I get them as a partner. I ride their motorcycle
Yeah.
around the whole country. Then they get excited about that. But then the other partner is like, how do you get a car company to sponsor you for a hiking show without a car?
Yeah.
Well, then, then you take the brand values of the car, this idea of the open road travel, freedom, blah, 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 and then you put those onto. So there's two kinds of ways you can go around sponsorship, and there's money out there, though.
Yeah. I should look at it, especially with the social following too,
Hmm.
because it's like at least I can give them a base guarantee of like, oh, I'll get out there to some people.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that there's an element of like, I think the challenge with the sponsors in the old days was that I was just without the social following, you're totally beholden to whether they say yes or no. Like you just can't do the project if they say no.
Right.
But nowadays with social, there's a version of the project that we can afford to do on my own budget. It won't be the opulent, but it could be out there. And I just think that I think that you know, the it feels very important to me, especially at this time in where we are in America and also where China is, to just keep the camera rolling in both places.
Right.
It's just like it's like you can't convince people to back down out of the neuron chains they already have in their brain.
Hmm.
They have to back themselves out.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so it's like both in China and here. And the only way to make them back the thing out is to really kind of approach um, creating the stuff in a truly open way where it's like, I'm here to show you what the reality is, and then you can interpret that the way you want.
Yeah.
One of my surprising videos I did the best while I was in China this last trip was like, how did Chinese people do Chinese takeout? Like, why my?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then and just like hanging out with a bunch of friends and seeing the why my come again and again and again, and the types of things people order, and people like, we ordered Japanese beer from a beer delivery service, and people just like in the comments, "Oh, I never thought in China they might drink Japanese beer." It's like, yeah, it's all open, man. It's all going. But like people discovering themselves the way other people live, and what you can take away from that. And I think that's really nice because it's one of the reasons why I think comedy, the stand-up has done so well in China and YT is doing well here. In China, they really need stand-up. They need to stand up on a stage and say what they think, and the culture really needs that.
And they need to laugh.
And they need to laugh because they're stressed as hell, and everybody works so hard, and it's hard to make money. And then in America, we need tea. We need to sit down and talk to people, and we need to slow everything down. And the point is not how fast can I get my caffeine? The point is to say, um, taking time to do something well is a good thing. Taking time to be with other people and talk is a good thing. And to do so in a way that, in my opinion, is not overly new agey or holistic or like, I think the people who really need that message are getting it from sort of like, ultra masculine or like, this sort of like, like strong strength, this type of messaging. And I'm like, to me, the strong person is the one who has control of themselves to be able to slow down. Like there's nothing strong about hurtling yourself forward until you hit a wall and then destroying yourself or other people for that matter.
Strong people are good listeners.
Strong people are good listeners, and strong people, I think, are willing to deal with multiple realities. What's the phrase? The cognitive dissonance.
Hmm.
Like that's the whole other thing. Just accepting that and this is again why I loved improv in the beginning. Yes. And starting with the thought that let me look first for the other person to be right. And what does the world look like if I am making the assumption that the other person is here in good faith and doing things right? Now, that's not a perfect assumption. There are people that are acting in bad faith, or people that are selfish, and their thoughts on the world are based off of their own world, and they really just don't care about others. But a lot of people do. And like, if somebody is truly so selfish or caught in their own world, you're probably not converting that person to any change anyway.
Definitely not.
But I think that I think that a lot of people, both in, China, they kind of write off America as being whatever imperialist, blah, blah, blah. And in America, they write off China as being communist or whatever, blah, 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 or the Trixies or whatever. And I would just make videos and be like, well, I'm sure there are some Chinese merchants that are tricking you, but like, these are the people I'm working with. Their face is literally here. What do you want to ask them? Like, I don't have control over some hypothetical business that some hypothetical person did. I have control over this business and this channel.
Right.
So, like, but people have been so brainwashed by some of these narratives. It's difficult. I mean, I made a video where I showed our like our factory where we make our porcelain.
Mhm.
And I was like, hey guys, like, especially in light of the trade war, I just think it's interesting for you to see the people who are working in our porcelain factory that are going to be affected in addition to us by these tariffs.
Mhm.
And one person in the comments said, like, stop showing off this slop. Like, we know that these things are made in these faceless factories in China. I'm like, the dude's face is literally here. This is the faceless factory.
Yeah.
You can look at his face. The face is presented to you, and you're so interested in keeping them faceless
Mhm.
that you've decided he's still faceless even after you saw his literal face.
Total brainwashing.
And I'm like, that's brainwashed behavior. And it wasn't achieved through state control of the media here.
Mhm.
It came apart through other ways. And I just think like that sort of thing to me is like mind bending. But I will also say it's a decision of mine to be worried about this guy because another 100 videos on the video were positive. Another 100 comments were positive. Like these people are a minority.
Yeah.
And they just happen to be a very large minority and an increasingly powerful minority. But like,
But I find people like, because I've lived all around the world. Like I did. So I've lived in China. I've lived
yeah,
in Dubai. I've lived in Switzerland. I lived in Switzerland for a couple of years. And now I'm here. Like this country by far has the most brainwashed population.
you think so?
Absolutely, because like in China, they obviously listen to what the government says because they're like deathly afraid of the government.
Yeah.
But here, I feel like people aren't that
People have
afraid.
chosen to do this to
Right,
themselves.
and that's the thing. It's like the government doesn't necessarily control the media companies, but other interests do.
Yeah.
And these echo chambers and this ignorance that exists, like about the rest of the world,
Yeah.
is shocking.
It's also, I think, in my opinion, like, more like if people in China don't like what's going on, there's no vote.
No.
Like, so like, what are they gonna do?
Yeah.
Like, but people here, like, I think people get caught up in the presidential election. I'm like, you can go to any local government meeting you want here and speak for 3 minutes,
Mhm.
and no one's in the back taking notes to think of you as an undesirable and then cancel your business.
Right.
Like, you can actually just participate in life, in civic life in America, and yet so much bad happens, I think, because people yell on the internet about stuff and then they don't do the work.
Mhm.
It's when I mean, and I'm guilty of that in myself, as much as other things. There's stuff I would like to change about downtown LA, but I don't go to any of the meetings.
Right.
So I think that you can only take on so many fights.
I'm Canadian, so I don't have a fucking vote in any of this shit.
Really? Well,
I'm a legal immigrant.
yeah, yeah, you're a legal immigrant. That's good. Yeah, make sure people know that because people yell about this on the internet.
Well, it's funny. Like it's funny because like it took me 6 months to get a visa to come here, and I had to use a lawyer and pay some money, and still like somehow my visa status or my immigration status gets mixed up in people like protesting in downtown LA, of which none are American citizens or probably legal American immigrants.
Some of the well, this is the thing is when you got a mask over your face, you don't know who's who.
Right?
And that's the thing about terror. If people feel like they're going to get deported by military SWAT, areas, people don't leave the house without a mask. And similarly, it's even more complicated here because people have families that are citizens.
Sure.
So like if my dad was undocumented and they arrested him, I'd be protesting.
Mhm.
I'd go out there. I mean, hey, they got my dad. Like
I know some people I know some people in LA whose parents are undocumented and whose children are US citizens with US passports.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's like who knows whether these people are citizens or not. It's also depends on the camera angle. Like there are non-American flags out there. There's also a lot of American flags. Depends where you want to point the camera. Right. So it's like if you want to support the camera, you can make whatever narrative you want. I think that's the thing that's as a cultural person in cultural exchange right now, the hardest thing to figure out is the type of communication that needs to be done by default. You need to deal with, for lack of a better term, ignorant people. And I don't say that in a disparaging way. Just the nature is if you don't know, you don't know.
Mhm.
anybody, we lived in China a long time. A lot of people just don't know.
And ignorant is a lack of knowledge, not being
Ignorance is like
stupid.
knowledge.
Yeah.
I think like what I say is people like being ignorant is sometimes not your fault. Insisting on being ignorant definitely is. And so this is, I think, the thing that needs to be explored, and where I think a lot of people who have a good heart when it comes to respecting culture, where I think that they do poorly, is that they're so eager to show their respect, they don't engage. They say, that's not my culture, I'm not going to engage in it. Or that's not my clothing, I'm not going to wear it. And I'm like, certainly, like, if you go to China, they love Westerners doing Chinesey stuff. Like, I think it's more complicated here because the ex-American community, Asian American, African American, whatever, when that culture winds up being adapted for the mass market, they tend to like somehow not get their piece of it.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a little bit more complicated, but in a global sense,
Mhm.
um, if we have two groups of people and one group of people is willing to bash the other culture and the other is too afraid of being seen poorly to engage with the culture, then you wind up not being able to do exchange from either side.
Right.
And so it's like, there are questions here that I'm glad I'm approaching through social rather than the traditional channel. Like, not really excited about having to pitch Netflix an idea about having a white guy be a host for a show in Asia.
Mhm.
It's like, I'm sure it's achievable, but it's definitely against the grain of what's going on in the Western, like, mainstream media space.
Sure.
But at the same time, it's like, I am who I am. I can't be anyone else.
Mhm.
And so I could just never engage with another culture because it could be problematic, but then you're not doing any of the work,
No.
So it's a difficult sort of balance to strike now, I think.
So okay, let's go back a bit. So where were you in December 2019? Walk me through this magic.
So the December 19 through, like, we'll say December 20 were just like absolutely wild. So in January,
You're
yeah,
the first person I've talked to on the podcast that
yeah.
was actually in China during COVID.
So ish. So the reason I say ish is because when I left, so I did this big TV show. I was on kind of their version of Next Comic Standing.
Mhm.
And I expected that I would be on the show once and I'd get some jokes on, I'd lose. I actually made the top 8 of the show.
Oh, congrats.
And the top 8, the last shoot was on January 22nd, 2020. And on January 23rd, I went back to America for what I thought would be a 9-day vacation. And when I left, COVID was a rumor, don't spread rumors. They were blocking the content. When I landed, COVID is real, everyone's locked down, your flight back is canceled. A week later, your visa is canceled. And after 9 years of living in Beijing, it just ended.
Yeah.
And I didn't get to say goodbye to everybody. I brought one bag with me. That was all I had from my life in China
Mhm.
from all those years.
Jesus.
And I kept renting my apartment for what turned out to be 9 or 10 months, trying to get back, couldn't get back. Tried to apply for visas, couldn't get the visas. And so I spent the whole year kind of in this weird moment of like everything falling apart, but also because I was on this TV show, that was the last comedy show that was shot before COVID. And so nobody had any new content. We were the last like new TV show that was being aired while everybody was stuck inside.
So they just kept rerunning you?
So they would rerun it. And then I did a charity show in February of 2020 when America was not closed yet, but China was closed and didn't have masks and didn't have stuff. I did a charity show at my high school raising money to buy PPE for Wuhan University Hospital.
Mhm.
And we fundraised $12,000 and it was like a great success. But that video of me doing this reached the top page of Douyin in China, like Chinese TikTok.
Mhm.
And so overnight, I got 1 million followers after years of doing work but not really having an online following. All of a sudden, I was on TV, going viral, and I got up to, I think at the peak, it was like 2.5 million followers. That mostly in that 2020, that year when I was working online, and I found you can get the millions of followers, still not be able to make a living.
Yeah.
And because of the restrictions now coming back to China, like I can tour in China now, but I'll only be able to do very, very safe content.
Mhm.
And so it's just like compared to the other options I have in spending time in my life, it's not a huge interest to me to go back and tour kind of like older, very, very safe content.
Mhm.
Um, so, but yeah, so that whole year was nuts because my 9-day vacation turned into 3.5 years before I could go back. And by 3.5 years, enough had changed that it was like, I just didn't want to move directly back to China and just be there full time. And so I'm still trying to figure out how I should be balancing my time and trying to mentally break out of this world where everything is closed.
It's wild, wasn't it? Like how everything just like because I was in Ethiopia filming, and I was a legal resident of Dubai and a property owner in Dubai, and I got blocked from going
They
back
didn't
to
let you back in.
yeah, they only let Emirati passport holders back in.
There were all sorts of wacky rules. I mean, I knew friends that were uh Chinese and an American that married, and they were on their vacation in like the Seychelles or something like that.
Mhm.
And they got stuck there, and so they lived in like a cabana on the beach for like a year and a half because they could go one of them could go back to America but couldn't take the other. One of them could go back to China, couldn't take the other.
Mhm.
I had a friend who like should join a monastery in Egypt
Mhm.
because she couldn't get in anywhere.
Well, you just
She was like, the only way back she's a Chinese citizen. She's like, I don't want to be in China now, and nowhere else is taking Chinese citizens except Egypt. So she just like joined a monastery and like lived up in a monastery for a year. It was crazy.
ridiculous. Yeah.
So, um, yeah, so I think that, and I think mentally I'm still recovering it from not just the sense that like, oh, I had a whole life and it blew up,
Mhm.
but I've kind of, I say gotten over that, but I've at least accepted it. But the thing
I
is
still have
that
some PSD from the whole
I
situation.
mean, I think I still have quite a bit as well. I'm getting over it. I think that ultimately, the thing that helps is if I look back, I'm like, I'm definitely a better position now than I was when COVID hit, with the growing my audience abroad and having the tea company and having learned new stuff about the internet and e-commerce and all this stuff. I feel like I've been growing, which is good. But I think the mentality that I had to adopt during COVID though was like, you can't do what you want. So do what you can. And in COVID, what that meant was making one video a day on social media, being able to share it, feeling like I'm productive, but you can't travel,
Mhm.
can't do any of this other stuff. Now you can travel. Like maybe I should be putting together this motorcycle tea tour show. Maybe we should do that together.
That'd be fun.
Motorcycle tea tour.
Yeah.
We'd totally do that. Um,
Through Southeast Asia would be huge.
Southeast Asia, Yunnan, like I love all these places. I think it'd be really, really fun. And but like we could do this stuff now. Whereas like I'm still mentally when I did this trip, being like, can you do that? Can I do that? Like, yeah, actually, yeah, it's okay now.
Yeah. This podcast actually came out of COVID. So I was in Ethiopia and then I couldn't go back to Dubai. So I ended up going to Istanbul and I was in Istanbul for 4 months, kind of stuck. And I was so kind of confused about what was going on in the world. I would just have an Instagram live chat every day with a friend or someone else I wanted to chat with around the world. And I did 100 of those calls in 100 days while I was in Istanbul, just as a way to like mentally stay busy to do because couldn't do anything.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you're like, hey, this should be a podcast.
This is it, right? I like talking to people.
No, it's great. I love the podcasting. I mean, like I do have a podcast, Tea Time with Jesse. I
Okay,
plug
good,
it.
good man.
Drink tea with people. I haven't updated in quite a while. I'm still trying to think of how to redo it, but we have quite a few episodes up already.
Amazing.
But it's yeah, I really like. I think that the podcasting is a just a good way to talk to people and meet people and I think get some of that real interpersonal thing and just not be on the internet all the time.
It's the only way.
It's the only way.
It,
So then what's your goals for the podcast going forward? I mean, it's going really well. You do a lot of episodes. Where do you want to take this?
I would love it to be financially sustainable,
Yeah.
and I would love it to be I mean, in a dream scenario, I would love to be able to do my podcast so efficiently and so effectively, and have it be so financially rewarding that it could even fund my television career.
Yeah.
But of course,
One advice on that, you got to sell something.
you have to.
You have to. And so that was the thing is I actually felt as a creator, the moment I accepted that, I like for years, I was like, I feel like selling stuff through content is schlocky.
Mhm.
I felt that way. And then when I started doing it, I realized like, oh, compared to having to like worry what the Communist Party thinks, or compared to having to convince Hollywood people,
Mhm.
or compared to having to like talk to sponsors, this is not, it is a lot of work, but at the end of the day, I own the company.
100%.
So, like, it's like and it also I think that there's ways I think the audience now is more understanding than they were kind of at the beginning of the age of the internet where they're like, show me my show. Like, you're doing an ad. Ugh, I hate ads. I think people realize now that like creators have to be supported somehow.
Yeah, for sure.
And a lot of people want to support me. Like people who buy the tea. Some people really want the tea. Some people are just like, I like what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like I want to help it out. So yeah, yeah, find something you can sell, I suppose.
Yeah, I don't mind that tea. Yeah, it's no, I've got a lot of I got a lot of ideas coming up, and we're gonna start running ads and stuff like that as well, and have a few products here. But it's all gonna be stuff that I use and believe in, and hopefully that kind of authenticity will come through and guide the audience into what is and what isn't.
But I think even being like more creative about like for instance, I during the trade war, the worst of it when I was like, can I just never sell tea again? I did think like, well, what if I did like a travel channel? Like it was like a travel service. And then I thought like, well, we could come up with itineraries and blah blah blah. Also, another way of doing this might just be like, hey, just open a week and tell people like, I'm gonna be in China this week doing tea stuff. If you show up, you get a vote in what we're doing that week.
Yeah.
And just like, let's show up and do tea stuff.
Hmm.
And then we'll have a small group and we'll go around and like it would be a very untraditional way of doing tourism, but it'd be much more like what I would do if I was just hanging out with my friends who are tea friends.
That might be a really good way to start it.
Yeah, and then that way it's like, but I think in terms of like the monetization of a podcast or whatever, I think unconventional products
Hmm.
are a really good way to look at it because it's like you can say exactly who are the people that watch the show? Who are you guys? What would you like?
Hopefully, travelers.
Totally travelers, yeah. Um, and then just the question becomes much simpler. It becomes what can I do that these people will like?
Mhm.
And that helps support me and help support the podcast. And this year I flew my whole tea company team to China. We flew 6 people from 4 from America, 2 from the Philippines, and 3 from China, all to Guangzhou and Yunnan to do 2 weeks in the tea mountains and shoot content and do videos. And I was like, I could spend this money on Google Ads,
Mhm.
or I could like fly my whole TP team to China and take video.
That would be amazing.
Like I was like, and so that's what we did. And so now, did I make my money back? I don't know. Like the jury's still out. A lot of videos haven't been edited yet, but like, um, I think that there's a lot of interesting ways of making the art and the commerce and the art and the commerce work together that are available now for the first time ever. And I think that's good for the art. It's good for the podcasters and it's good for the creators. And it's good for the customers because they get to have products that are like, no one else is doing them. If you just need tea in a bag, you can go to Whole Foods or whatever, or go to Ralph's.
Yeah, I think it's pretty obvious online. I hope to all of you people out there. I hope it's obvious online when you see a creator or a storyteller reach a level of financial freedom
Mhm.
and then follow what they make after they've reached that level of financial
Yep.
freedom versus someone who hasn't reached any financial
Yeah,
freedom.
you make
And
different stuff.
you make different stuff, you have a different narrative, you have a different point of view. There's a different stress level to production.
Yeah.
Everything's different. And I think like the goal for the audience out there is to definitely want to help support and get their favorite storytellers or content creators or product makers into a place where they can be somehow financially free, where they can actually do the stories that they really want to do. And that actually
Yeah.
benefits everyone.
I mean, imagine, in your past life as a journalist, imagine if you were just like, like whatever, like Victorian era, like, you just like have means and this is what you want to do with your time. You would do very different stories than if you have to be a part of like whatever, a newspaper and, you have to do the stories the boss tells you to do or whatever. Like you'd come up with different stuff.
I think that's been the kind of winning case for my television shows actually is because I have been able to fund them through corporate partnerships and through speaking events and all that kind of other stuff. So I haven't really had to take a lot of broadcast money.
Yeah.
So then of
Show
course,
can be show you want to shoot.
yeah, then I don't get notes, and then I'm directing and producing the whole thing. I mean, I'm also hosting it,
Yeah.
so I'm in it, and it's exactly the way I want it to look, and it's because I've been able to find that financial freedom with other partners, and then I just give the
Yeah.
product to the broadcasters. They don't pay as much for it, but they have zero say in it.
Yeah.
And then they broadcast it, and it's always niche and it's always a little different. It's never super mainstream. Sometimes you get good slots like 8 p.m., 9 p.m. on a Thursday,
Yeah.
which is great. But other times it's just online streaming, and then people can watch it whenever they want. So
Yeah.
as long as it's out there, like you said right at the beginning, like you're way better off making stuff.
Yeah. Good things happen when you make stuff, and, like, if you don't make stuff, nothing happens.
Right.
So it's like, just if you make the stuff, I think this is, I think, one of the things I've really learned over the years being a creative person. The most of my stress comes from my personal standards for myself,
Hmm.
it's very rarely like, "Oh, I released the video and the video did so poorly, I have consequences."
No.
By the time the video's out, I've had the fun, which was making the thing.
Right.
Like, the whether people actually watch the video or not is in many ways irrelevant. It's kinda funny, like, I do Chinese TV. I don't watch the shows that I do on Chinese TV.
Yeah.
It's a lot more fun to be in the crowd of the people making them than to, like, watch your own show over and over again.
For sure.
And so in that sense, like, the trick is, like, how to get out of the pressure, like, out of the expectation of saying, like, the people who wind up, like, really hating the industry of making stuff are the people who are like, "I'm working 8 years on this one script, and, like, no one's buying it." It's like, once you've reached the point where you're not getting benefit from the creative process, that thing kinda has to be gone.
Hmm.
Like, you can put it away a while and pick it up later, but, like, the problem was you're putting all this expectation onto the script. It has to succeed in a very specific way for you to be happy, and usually in the film world, it's like being bought by a producer or, like, being turned into a feature film.
Sure. Yeah.
But really that, like, the you might make a movie and put a ton of energy into it, and maybe it doesn't even get made, but, like, you gotta go on to the next thing and keep making stuff.
I've had a few writers on the podcast,
Yeah.
and one of the great pieces of advice one of them gave me at one time was he's like, if you want to be a writer, he goes, write 6 movie scripts as quickly as possible, and then throw out the first 5, and then make that 6th one the one you actually show someone,
Yeah.
and make it the basis for how you want to do the rest.
Yeah.
Because he's like, if you take that first one, you spend too many years on it, too much time on it. It's never going to go anywhere. It's just going to be like you have to make them good. You have to put your heart and soul in them, but you got to fucking turn them out because you never know which one someone's going to like, and then ask you to develop further.
Yeah.
Because it's the further development that's the key. It's not the initial.
Yeah. People have this, idea, I think, where they're like, "Oh, I should make this as good as possible." And it's like, "No, you should make it good enough that when the right people see it, they wanna be part of it."
Right? Yeah.
That's all you need to do. You don't even need to push all the way. I find it more liberating
Yeah.
because it's like, writing a movie. I have written a movie script all the way through, and I did it as basically a writing challenge. But like, if I had actually expected this movie to be made, I'd still be grinding on trying to make this movie, even though the time isn't right, things aren't right, US, China, everything is bad.
Mhm.
It's like it's almost a fantasy movie now where everybody is like not fighting.
Mhm.
It's like, I was like, but uh but yeah, just getting stuck too long on one project is really damaging. And I think that people think that they're doing the right thing by trying to make every bit of every project good.
Right.
When really what you need to do is like put enough into it that if the universe is truly open to that project, it will continue to grow. And I say that kind of in a, like, not truly spiritual sense, but there's a little bit of, had said before, like, Darwinian. Like, I really feel like there are things that evolve naturally, and in the right environment, you don't need to tell them how to evolve, they evolve.
Yeah.
And in the wrong environment, you can push as much as you want, it doesn't happen.
Just like hitting a wall.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's just like, and it's fun to live in world number 1, and it's terrible to live in world number 2. So whether or not it's actually true, it feels better to live in world number 1 than
We're
world number 2.
we're always dipping in and out of both.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, no, but it's super fun, and I think, I just had another question for you, having made all these shows,
Sure.
like, how do you look at the balance between, like, what I will call, like, real television, like making a show, making it a higher production quality, something that you wanna get distributed, and how much time you wanna spend on stuff like the podcast or other smaller stuff that you don't need, like, anyone's permission or energy to shoot?
Yeah, it's a good kind of idea of how to understand that balance. So I see the podcast as like brushing my teeth every day. Like it's so I started the podcast when I came to LA because I couldn't make TV at
Yeah.
that stage yet. And also I didn't know anyone in LA.
Yeah.
So it was a great way for me to A, stay busy, B, create stories and share stories with people, and then C, meet people.
Yeah.
So it was like, it was part of my everyday routine, and I kind of built it into my everyday routine, which is
Yeah.
why it's been going, I think, pretty good. But it doesn't generate the income. So it's like, what do you still do with the income? How are you still raising money? And it's a delicate balance between the two. Like I definitely, once I start going back to full-time television production, which I'm definitely going to be doing, The podcast will have to be less because
Yeah.
I'll just be making too much stuff all around.
It's good. I mean, it's a good reason to make less podcasts as you have other stuff to do.
But I love this format.
And I also think the good thing about the internet goes up and down, up and down. People who are fans of the podcast, I'm sure they'd love to have you make 4, 5, 6 a week. Hey, and if you do, you should pay them somehow.
Somehow, yeah.
Patreon, whatever. I don't know what you're running, but
Yeah.
but like, if you have whatever, you have like one a week, and then it becomes every other week, and then when you're in between projects again, it comes back on stronger. Hey, this is, I think, the best part of social is no one's like the fact that no one's paying you is liberating
Yeah.
in the sense that it's like, you don't need to release at the same day, at the same time, at the same everything. It's great if you can,
Mhm.
but like to beat yourself up about hitting some sort of like deadlines that are self-imposed. I think that as long as the deadlines are there to be able to make sure you actually work and are creating stuff,
Yeah.
like you don't need to beat yourself up about not making enough of the thing that is not making any money.
It's true, yeah, because like, we're looking at filming for 2 months in Argentina later this year, and, of course, like, the podcast will take a hiatus
Where would you go?
all over, yeah. It'll be another Tough Rides motorcycle series, so we'll go north to all the way to Ushuaia in the south, and
Oh, wow.
yeah,
I bet there's some real crazy motorcycling there, like some great views.
absolutely. Wild. South America is amazing.
I've never been. I
Okay.
gotta go.
Oh, we're so close.
Yeah, I know. It's closer than in Asia. Like, compared to living in Asia, that was definitely true.
I'll send you some links to Tough Rides Brazil because that was pretty special.
Was that good?
Yeah, it was a
No,
good
I
one.
feel like that'd be great. I'd love to see some more of it. And then yeah, it's Vietnam. The other cool thing, if you ever do want to do motorcycling there, is like the whole society is all motorcycle based because it's not wealthy enough. People don't have cars.
Yeah.
There are definitely cars there, but like you get up in the mountains, I'll be like, oh my God, this slope is incredibly intense. And I'm like trying to keep control of the bike. And like a 12-year-old on a motorcycle just zips past me, taking like a massive blind turn.
Or a mother with 3 kids on the back.
Yeah, it's like, multiple people, or like a mother holding a daughter holding a chicken or whatever. It's just like all the way down. So
It's the best.
it's great. So
Yeah.
that's very cool.
Is there anything on the podcast that we haven't chatted about that you want to get into?
Um,
We're coming up to the 2-hour mark.
oh, is it? How long do you usually shoot? Like,
As long as we go, as long as we want to go. I'm just curious where you are.
no, I think it's good. I mean, I think, I'm just glad to be able to share the experience, meet you. I mean, like, I was saying earlier when you met me and you're like, oh, we lived in Shanghai 18 years. I'm like, oh, great. Thank goodness. I just don't, there's so many elements of living in China that it's like, you can really only share them with the other people that were there. And then all of a sudden, oh, great. Blood brothers. Excellent.
Where in Shanghai did you live?
So I was based in Beijing, most of my time in Beijing, although I did live in Xinjiang for like 6 months when I was writing a show for a Shanghai TV station.
Okay.
And but I go to Shanghai a lot to do shows. I mean, I would be taking the high-speed rail back and forth from Beijing to Shanghai multiple times. I also did shows on the Royal Caribbean cruise ships
Oh, yeah.
all throughout Asia, doing Chinese stand-up on the ships.
Oh, nice. Was that fun?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. They love it because it's 45 minutes and they only have to fly one person out.
Mhm.
So it's like they have a whole musical with 12 people and a huge cast and all this money that's taken up with the stage. And then they can just throw one person up and do 45 minutes. So that was a lot of fun. And it was a great gig, especially at the earlier stages of my career where it was like, yeah, doing like Chinese open mics are not going to make a lot of money.
Yeah.
But that was based out of Shanghai. So I would be flying in and out of Shanghai and going to and from Shanghai to get on the boat.
That's cool. I lived right next to the Portman Ritz-Carlton. I lived
But-
on Uramuchilu.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Who know? The street with no street sign now.
Right?
But I love Shanghai, and I was just there a couple weeks ago, and I was just like, it's funny being in Shanghai compared to LA because they're both big, sprawly cities, and it's like shocking how much better Shanghai runs than LA, considering how much of a big, sprawly city it is.
And how much cleaner it is.
Yeah, not too bad. I mean, LA, the weather is great though. That's the thing is, it was muggy as hell there the whole time. It was not very comfortable to be there, but the city itself is pretty cool. So.
Summers are nasty, and then you get the summer monsoon.
Oh yeah, I bet it's a ton of fun. And I was there in the winter too when nothing ever got dry. So like, cause it was just like too wet. And so like you try to hang up your clothes outside and they never dry completely. So Shanghai, I have ups and downs to it, but I like Shanghai a lot. It's a great place, but I'm really a Beijinger at heart. So
Where do you see your comedy and where do you see your tea business going in the next like year or so?
next year, I think, it's kind of sad, but I'd be happy to be where we are now and not have collapsed. It's my first time, like, when I was in China all those years, just knowing, okay, the government just makes decisions. They change based off of politics. It may or may not be related to data, and it's mostly about them. It feels the same now being in the States.
Mhm.
It feels like I don't have the ability to plan because I'm on 60 or 90-day while we figure it out, is the current plan for, you know, I have over 500,000 fans on TikTok, which in theory in 2 weeks is gonna get blocked, but it'll probably be kicked down the can 60 days.
Jesus.
Like, I just my the trade war, there's a trade war, then there's a temporary thing. Now they have a new trade deal, which they're kind of marketing as if it meant something, but really it brings us back to where we were in April. So nothing has been done. I think it would be foolish to assume that we're going to have 4 years of peaceful trade with China, given what's going on. So it's basically impossible to plan. And so really, I'm not even looking at planning. I'm looking at this is why I asked you the question.
Surviving.
Mentally, how do you? What is the correct mental framework to be in a world where both of my homes are very unstable?
Yeah, you're defensive.
Yeah, you gotta be I think when there's the thing is I don't like just being defensive though, but there's a mentality about where the right risks are to take and also what time is it? Like again, Master Ding, if you try to be too much of a, pushing on content during the Cultural Revolution, you're gonna have problems. If you wanna push on content in the 80s and 90s, you can do it.
Mhm.
So there's times and places to do different types of um aggression is the wrong word, but not being defensive, proactivity.
Mhm.
There are areas I feel like where the proactivity will still be rewarded, and it feels more comfortable to live a proactive life rather than a reflexive life.
Yeah, reacting to the chaos of the world on a daily basis is I feel like I've been doing it for 5 years. Like, it's just like
Same.
first it was COVID, then it was the writer's strike and the actor's strike, and now it feels like 2024 was like the first normal year in a long time, but not it wasn't enough.
But I think that this is the lesson is that like humans crave stability, but we just won't get it. Like this is not a time and place where it's going to be easy to have stability. It's going to be very expensive and it's not going to be as stable as things were before. And so I'm kind of like, I'm looking into like how can I be back and forth and maybe like, I still have my life in America and I've got my setup here in LA as a base. I'm not planning on leaving, but like maybe I should spend more time in Asia. Maybe I should go to India and see what the tea is like there, or Japan, or we have warehouses that we're opening up in the EU and UK. Spend more time in Europe.
Yeah.
Like, so I think this is why I asked about dating. If there's any way how I could do that and still be able to go on dates.
Well, there's lots of people everywhere. There's men and women everywhere.
It's true.
There's never you'll never run into a problem where there's no one to
Well, I
please.
find women like knowing that you know where you're gonna be in 2 months. It's just like but, maybe not there are different women out there. Maybe some of them are more okay with the
Travel.
travel and the sort of the wackiness, so,
Yeah, gee, if you're respectful and you're a global nomad, that's part of it.
yeah,
So there's lots of people living that life.
that's true. So and I think it's, and again, it's easier than ever to do it, and I think a lot of this sort of sort of nationalist sentiment in not just in America, but everywhere is based off of this idea that, of course, this is the best place to be.
Mhm.
Um, and when you go and travel abroad, you realize like there's a lot of great stuff about living in America. There's a lot of great stuff of living in Canada. There's a lot of great stuff about living in Thailand or in China or in whenever any of these other places. I'm sure Switzerland had a lot of good stuff going for it.
Yeah.
So like there's many different ways to live. And so I think that that helps build up that muscle of like again not being brainwashed, not being put into that. I think that that's a good way to go about doing that messaging. It's like, hey, the traveling, if you go and you learn stuff about other people and other places and you come back and you truly believe you're in the best place, then that's based on something.
Yeah,
But if you haven't done it, it's not based on something.
that's the truth, right? Is like laying down those markers of experience to actually be able to make real life decisions.
Yeah, and you wind up with like, hey, like I love that's one of the things I love about LA. People have a backyard and they can have a barbecue and you can like actually go and hang out on like a flat lawn and stuff like that. You can't do that in China. No one has a barbecue and like
Mm.
places to go. And you try to set up a barbecue in a public park, they'll probably kick you out.
Mhm.
So like. There's a lot of stuff like, the natural beauty of America and like even the car culture, which is like, I don't like it in many ways because I'm used to living in places with transit, but there is something magical of just by being able to get in your car and drive out into the wilderness and, not have to register with the police when you stay at a hotel. You're right. So it's like, There's a lot of, the thing is, I think there's a lot of good stuff about being in America, but I feel almost like if I hadn't gotten a chance to travel outside, you'd just be guessing whether it was good.
I know a lot of people who do business with China who are based in the United States, and right now they've just kind of written off a lot of the business between the US and China over the next couple of years, apart from like Apple and semiconductors and Nvidia, and they're focusing on other markets.
I think from a brain perspective, that's not a bad way to say it. What I will say though is that when I go back there, and I go back there quite a bit, the reality of China is very different from the perception right now.
Sure.
Like it's still in like it's a place where you need to be very subtle about the way you do things.
Mhm.
But if you are subtle and you know how to live in both worlds, all the opportunities are still there.
Right.
It's like, it's not just when people are talking about Chinese manufacturing and they're making low quality stuff, I'm like, go there, man. Like they've spent 40 years where every intelligent engineer has worked on factory and manufacturing management. Like, in an ideal world, 40 years of American work will put us where they are now
Right.
because they worked on it for 40 years and they've worked really hard. And a lot of people that in our culture would otherwise have gone into, say, like finance or like consulting, these people in China took engineering and worked 20 hours a day trying to figure out how to manufacture stuff because that was the opportunity their economy had for them.
And building those ecosystems around, right?
Yeah,
Because like,
it's so much fun to build this stuff in China. Like even, it wasn't the same when I went to Taiwan. When I went to Taiwan, I want to do like a Taiwanese tea box. The tea was easy to find. There's great tea there. But then I'm like, yeah, I want to do custom packaging. No, we got these 20 like packages. Pick the one you like. No, I want to do custom. Like, you don't have printers. We do, but it's like there's only one company in the whole country that really does this packaging, and you're not really a big enough person. And like,
and you like
what
what
is
is
the
in
minimum order? What is the minimum order? Oh, they're not going to want to give. They just didn't want to do it. And you go to China, you call up 10 places, you get 10 quotes, and they're ready to make it. They're super excited to make hungry, and it's and people I think a lot of people put their creative energy into that work of making the stuff.
Yeah.
Like, people don't tend to think of manufacturing as an artistic process, but it's very iterative.
Yeah.
It's like anything we wanna make, whether it's packaging, materials, tea products, tea equipment. Yeah, how deep do you wanna get into it? Because you can get as deep as you want, and it's fundamentally a creative process. It's creating the stuff. So, I think that like, anything like that, I'd be very glad to do it in China, and not even on a sense of like, "Oh, well, it's cheaper there." It's not necessarily even cheaper in many ways. They're just really good.
not especially now when you have to export it.
Yeah, and yeah, so but I think that that's a new creative element that I'm hoping maybe you said, like, where I wanna be in a year. I don't know about a year, but in the next 5 to 10 years, like, this ability to understand, like, how things are made and how they're manufactured and exported. It sounds kind of like overly businessy and not artistic at all, but you get into it, it's very artistic. It's like,
I bet, yeah.
how do you create a great show with limited resources? How do you create a great thing with the realities of the challenges of doing it with limited resources as well? It's a similar project.
I mean, an online business where you're shipping tea all around the world, like the complexities of all of that and warehouses and advertising and, yeah, just
Luckily
running
now
ads.
Yeah, luckily now, yeah, and we don't run ads because it's all native traffic, but we should be running ads because it's so difficult to even just figure out what ads to buy.
Mhm.
And as I got into it to be a performer and make stuff, so I'm always not looking to buy ads as a way, because like avoiding the work of doing the thing I like, which is making the videos.
Mhm.
But ultimately, we should figure out how to sell ads and or do ads because there's no reason not to.
No, there's like,
Um,
companies that specialize in that, I think.
but this is the problem, is like everybody says they specialize in it, and then there's all of these companies have an out, which is, oh, your video you gave us wasn't good enough.
Yeah, that's
That's like
always
so
a
it's like there's no accountability at any level of anything there, and, like, I've been very disappointed when you start to ask people in digital ad buying, like, "Show me that it works."
Mhm.
It's very difficult to show that it works, but I think part of that is just because it's, like, not necessarily that they're, like, screwing you over. It is impossible to know what ad will work. If any one person in the world got it, they would just be a billionaire in 3 days.
Yeah.
It's that, but, like, at the same time, a lot of these, ad companies are set up Basically, in the modern day of advertising, you buy ads, they put it out to a bunch of people, and then they have algorithms that determine whether it did well, whether it did poorly, who's buying what type of ad works for what person. And then if you basically what this means is you have to pay your money to train their algorithm. So if you're spending millions or tens of millions a year, I bet it actually works
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
because you would be able to eventually get to the point where the algorithm is so intelligent that you have a lot of control over what you're doing. But I think if you're buying $3,000 of ads a month, which is already a lot of ads, like
Mhm.
you can live well for $3,000. To put that amount even into ads, you don't see 10,000, 20,000 coming back.
No.
So it's like, I just personally feel like a lot of it, and more, the ads are sold at auction, which means by definition, they're looking to give you as little excess value as possible and still buy the ad.
Yeah.
So there's a lot there that I just get really worried about in the same way when I do social media stuff with the native traffic and trying to actually make stuff. I'm like, oh, here I have the advantage because everybody else is completely unfunny and uncreative, and they're trying to pretend to be somebody, whereas I'm actually been a creator long enough. I do me.
Yeah.
And so it's like I
It's
have
a
an
good
advantage there.
a good way to build like a authentic audience.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is, like, let's say you even pay for your ads and you have customers. They may not be your real customers. They may just be the type of people who respond to the ad. Whereas if you have a real channel and you really make stuff, then the people who come there are gonna be real, like, they're real supporters. I don't even call them customers per se. They're like supporters of tea education and tea and culture and comedy, yeah.
And they'll stick around a little longer.
That's the hope. So if you're a fan of this podcast, make sure you stick around as long as it takes.
I'm trying.
Yeah,
We're trying. No,
yeah,
it's going pretty well.
it's great.
Yeah. LA is a great town and there's lots of interesting people here like yourself.
People are great. The people are super fun.
Yeah. And wild.
And wild, and I like, and it's a dreamer place. Like I really like being around places where like people are like, people will go to vast lengths to create stuff that doesn't exist because they just want it to exist.
Yeah.
And like, there's something really healthy about being in that environment, even if there is a lot of concrete and highways and stuff in the middle of it.
Absolutely. We're still close enough to some nature.
Exactly. That's the thing. The nature is underplayed here because you do have to drive a little bit, but if you don't have a 9 to 5, great. You can really do a lot of good nature stuff out here in LA.
It works out well.
Very cool.
Well, look, Jesse, where can we find you and your tea company and everything online?
Sure. You can search Jesse Appell. The tea company is Jesse's Tea House. It's at Jesse's Tea House on all of the platforms. For comedy, it's spread out, but if you search like Jesse Appell comedy or white guy Chinese comedy, you'll probably find me. There's a lot of them. Yeah, I really just encourage people to check out the channels. I work a lot on making content. I basically made a video every day for the tea channel for 1,000 days.
No small task.
Yeah, it's a lot. That's why you're here. You have over 100 episodes. I'm like, that's good work. It's not easy.
No.
Yeah, hopefully we'll be doing. I'd love to do more shows and more tea and more shows and more tea. And if we get enough followers, we can make it happen.
Brilliant, buddy. Well, look, thank you so much for swinging by the studio today. And if you ever want to come back and just talk shop or just
Yeah.
talk anything,
Yeah.
now that we kind of know who you are, it's always nice for you to come back and we can just hang
Next
out.
time I'll bring the tea stuff.
Oh, that'd be nice.
I
Yeah.
was gonna bring it now for this one, but I was like, I don't want to make like your podcast into my podcast before I know you. So
I'll come onto your podcast.
yeah, come on to mine at some point. We will revive it at some point. We'll get
Okay.
it on there. So
Good man.
awesome. Sounds great.
So
Thanks
look,
much.
squeeze in a little and we'll go up to this camera up here. Squeeze in. Come right in. So that people can actually see that we're in the same room.
There we are.
Yeah.
It
No,
did actually
no
happen.
zoom. No zooms.
Exactly. Are you had anybody who's like this setup is fake?
Yeah. And I've had some people who got upset because I wouldn't do a Zoom with them because I love the personal in-person experience.
Yeah, that's the fun of it as well. Like especially after COVID.
Yeah.
Always like this is good stuff. So
Let's-
thank you so much.
And
Appreciate it.
let's get a drink.
Let's do it.
All right.
Okay.
We're out
Turn cameras off.
and fade to black.